Oh god! Oh, fuck. We haven't even started the video and I'm already coming up for air. Look how stupid this image is. We've got emo Ash Ketchum with a fucking Illuminati hat. I didn't even know they had a merchandising deal. An ironically ungodly fusion of Pikachu and Bill Cipher, sporting an incredibly unsightly skin tag above the eye. And on the screen of a smartphone that looks even cheaper than my clapped-out 7-year-old slider, there's a Gengar sporting what I can only assume is a layer of Coral Blue No. 2 semi-gloss lipstick.
Actually, it's Coral Blue No. 2.
And it's all on a generic hypno-swirly background. It's so painfully, surreally terrible that I almost want to call it a Dadaist masterpiece.
This cannot be Dada! It's too normal to be Dada! It's too shit to be anything else!
Yeah, okay, he's got a point. Honestly, if your title card artist isn't you, you should probably fire him. Then again, if it is you, I've always wondered what it would look like if somebody fired themselves.
Alright, hey everyone, it's TVC Mario, and you're here for another edition of Satanic Illuminati Media Exposed.
AKA Dan Brown, the series.
In today's video, I wanted to go ahead and start my video series exposing the new Pokemon Go video game. This game is so popular, there are millions and millions of people who are just flocking to download the app and start playing the game.
Oh, rub it in, why don't you?
Now, I wanted to go ahead and warn everyone that this is, in fact, an agenda to mind control the masses to prepare them for the augmented transhumanist reality, the coming Illuminati matrix that's going to be created and is going to plug people into it, literally.
You serious?
Oh look, yet another fucker who doesn't know what literally means. Or rather, what it's supposed to mean. Good God, I fucking hate how we've broken the word over the past 100 or so years.
By the end of this video here today, you're going to see that there is a sinister agenda behind this game. There are many, in fact, and that's why I'm going to do several videos. But today, I wanted to specifically focus in on the augmented reality transhumanist agenda of the Pokemon Go video game.
Oh my god, he's serious. Okay, so I'm just gonna play like I'm a psychic type here for a second and make us a little premonition. How much you guys want to bet TVC has no idea what the differences between augmented reality and virtual reality are? Hell, double or nothing. He thinks The Matrix is a documentary. Any takers? Anyone? Ah, damn it. Looks like I'm going home none the richer. Y'all know we don't monetize these videos, right?
So, let's go ahead and get right into it. Now, the first thing that we need to talk about is the agenda to become a transhuman. I've talked about this on this YouTube channel repeatedly. For those of you who don't know, there's a movement out there called the transhumanist movement. And the Illuminati, these secret societies that run our world, are transhumanist.
Okay, I would wait until he explains his stuff, but I'm gonna say right now that he does such a shitty job explaining what transhumanism really is, that I guess I'll have to do it for him. Transhumanism is an intellectual movement that aims to transform the human condition by developing and creating widely available sophisticated technologies to greatly enhance human intellectual, physical, and psychological capacities. Transhumanist thinkers study the potential benefits and dangers of emerging technologies that could overcome fundamental human limitations, as well as the ethics of using such technologies. Now, TVC using transhuman probably wasn't right. I personally think post-human is more accurate. I also call your use of movement into question. The Wikipedia bit I posted also uses movement, but it uses it as part of intellectual movement. You make it sound like there are people out there who want to start this big revolution to make people transhuman or post-human or metahuman or whatever the fuck you want to call it. Intellectual movement, however, implies that it's part of a philosophy focusing on the ethics and science behind the possible technology of all this. While I don't consider myself a transhumanist in any way, because I personally think the risks of such technology would outweigh the benefits, I can understand why transhumanism as a philosophy and intellectual movement exists. And the fact that you're being so fucking narrow-minded about this just shows that you're, quite frankly, intellectually stunted, if not intellectually dishonest. How very Christian of you.
I'm sorry, but speaking as someone who occasionally flirts with transhumanist philosophy, and it is a philosophical school of thought, not some kind of active socio-political movement. I can't even hear the word without immediately thinking, I sexually identify as an attack helicopter. You've ruined me, Tumblr!
They believe that through technology and mutating their DNA, they are going to achieve divine godhood.
That's immortality that's the ultimate goal of some of these transhumanists, not divine godhood. And even then, that's only a small fraction that want immortality. You know why so many transhumanists don't want immortality? Because they're afraid that they'd end up overpopulating the Earth if they end up immortal. Or even more simply, they'd get fucking bored!
To become immortal men here on Earth.
Oh, so you do bring up immortality. Here's the problem though. Immortality is not the same thing as omnipotence nor omniscience. You of all people should know this given how you believe in an immortal, omnipotent, and omniscient God.
This is a great deception, and in fact, the only way to eternal life is by Jesus Christ.
Unless, of course, you believe in another religion that believes in eternal life after death. Way to be sensitive to other people's religious beliefs there, asshole.
This is Satan's counterfeit. Satan wants to counterfeit God, so he wants to promise
That audio flub editing, though.
humanity a salvation, but it'll never happen. It's a deception. But in the world today, we have fallen human beings who are deceived into thinking that they will become cybernetic gods of a golden age in the future. Now, part of the agenda to create this augmented reality for the cybernetic illuminist is to create a augmented reality, a sort of matrix, so that the world that we have right now is actually no longer in existence.
Aha! See, this is where we get into the meat and potatoes of the matter, and this is something really near and dear to me, being a massive sci-fi geek and an obsessive gamer on top of that. What TVC is describing here is a virtual reality, not an augmented reality. Now, I'm pretty sure that most of our audience are of a similar mind to my own and know what these two things are, but just in case someone stumbles across this video and isn't familiar with VR/AR terminology, let me take a second to break it all down for you. TVC's description of the transhumanist agenda sounds like a direct ripoff of The Matrix, which is pretty much one of the best modern examples of virtual reality in science fiction. Virtual reality is a technology that gives users the sensation of being in a world that is not our own by blocking out real-world sensory input and replacing it with artificial sensory stimulation. This sort of technology isn't nearly as immersive in real life as it is in The Matrix or Tron or even Digimon, God help you, but it's been around in one form or another for decades. Ever been to an arcade that had a racing game with a moving cockpit? That's an early form of VR. Mission Space at Disney World's Epcot is an even more immersive VR experience in the same vein. And, of course, we can't overlook the home version. The Oculus Rift and the HTC Vive have become veritable darlings for bringing the immersion of VR into gamers' day-to-day lives. Pokemon Go is not virtual reality. It's augmented reality. Augmented reality is any technology that overlays additional sensory input over the input you're already receiving from the world around you. It's actually relatively new technology compared to full-on VR, with the earliest examples I'm aware of manifesting courtesy of Nintendo's DSi and 3DS systems, AR cards, face raiders, but it's become fairly common in cell phone apps like Pokemon Go. Anyone with half a brain could tell you they're completely different technologies, and it's worth noting that neither technology is even close to the idea of plugging into the Matrix, leaving your body behind and experiencing the world entirely digitally. That's just not feasible with our current technological know-how, and neither Satan nor Pikachu has the power to change that!
It is basically replaced with a fantasy cybernetic false matrix. And the Pokemon Go game introduces this concept with augmented reality. Augmented reality is something I've been talking about, and I'm going to continue to expose as part of the transhumanist agenda. They literally want to plug us into the Matrix.
Wait, didn't he just say all this shit? I think his programming is caught in a logic loop or something.
Oh my god, the Matrix, guys, is clearly a Cylon or some shit.
Sigma, Cylons are Battlestar Galactica.
Oh, please, these guys can't even figure out how logic works. Do you really think they care about fictional continuity?
There is going to be a reality that soon will be only seen through cybernetic eyes.
He says while hovering his cursor over AR goggles.
You're going to need augmented technology in order to access it.
But it's not a virtual reality, is it?
And I need to warn you, at some point, we are going to have to break away from the technology.
Or you could, I don't know, just not buy the tech you don't want? Nobody's forcing you to buy Pokemon Go. Hell, nobody's forcing you to buy a smartphone, much to my unending chagrin. My point is, if you don't want to use augmented reality tech for one reason or another, nobody's making you. The technology hasn't reached a point where society needs it to function, and in all likelihood it never will. Much as the internet hasn't stopped people from meeting IRL, something Wendy and I have actually done, then you can bet that there will be times when people put down the Google Glass and go for a walk in the woods like the ones your youth group leader used to take you on. Alone. Just fly unzipped.
And most humans won't. You know, you see the stuff like Pokemon Go, and they're like, yeah, this is so cool, man. Let me just jump into the transhumanist reality matrix without even thinking about this.
I'm someone who doesn't even have a smartphone. I don't give a shit about not having access to Pokemon Go. I really don't. I personally think the hype about Pokemon Go has been blown way out of proportion, especially since about half of the people playing Pokemon Go never even gave a shit about Pokemon before now. Not to mention the game has inadvertently caused some stupid shit to happen. That being said, I can't deny that Pokemon Go is doing some good things for people. It's getting people to actually go outside and socialize and exercise. It's doing good things for people, yet here you are saying it's part of some conspiracy agenda. Are you fucking kidding me?
You know, it's going to be literally presented as the most awesome thing. Think about it. Most people flock to go get their iPhone 6. So when the augmented transhumanist matrix is created and people can come and play video games and do things like this, trust me, they're going to flock to it. And they already are with this ridiculous video game.
The game is not a virtual reality simulation. Good lord.
Okay, so we need to be on guard and vigilant. This is a very sinister agenda by twisted people. Here you see on Time Magazine, they believe that by the year 2045, they're going to be able to plug into this cybernetic augmented reality, this matrix that's been created, and become immortal.
Yeah, and 15 years ago, there were people who thought we'd have time machines by 2009. What's your point?
Oh, please. Time Magazine hasn't been culturally relevant in upwards of a decade now. It's basically just another sensationalist birdcage liner that's less concerned with actual news than it is with the vapid, outdated opinions of its own resident stock of talking heads. I'd say you're better off getting information from the National Enquirer at this point, but, well, something tells me you already do.
And in fact, they showed us in movies that this was their agendas. One of the things about Hollywood is they're not just creating entertainment movies, okay guys? The movies are specifically created as predictive programming, showing us things before they occur.
Do you not understand the concept of speculative fiction? Sci-fi falls under that umbrella. Of course various science fiction stories are going to make predictions about the future of humanity. Look at Star Trek. I'm talking about the original series, by the way. Now, while we're light years away from contacting an alien species or making starships that run on technology similar to Star Trek's warp drive, people decided to run with the concept in the series and build on it to make real-life technology based on technology in the series. Look at the communicator. Now look at how similar it is to old model cell phones. Yeah, someone took inspiration from Star Trek to make cell phones. Now telephones already existed, and it's smaller scale compared to Star Trek's main gimmick, but it still shows how a sci-fi show can be an inspiration for how real-life technology can meet and even surpass that of a TV show.
Here in the Matrix, we actually saw the augmented reality.
Virtual
Neo
reality.
Gets plugged into, you could say, the Oculus Rift, and then sees cybernetic reality that in fact isn't even real.
Neo is being plugged into a virtual reality. The Oculus Rift is a virtual reality device. You don't plug yourself into it, and this is what it looks like.
Hello everybody, my name is Markiplier, and I've got another Oculus Rift horror game for you guys, but this time I actually have a gamepad that I can play to really get into the game, so I hope you guys are going to enjoy this one.
Huh. That guy kicking him in the balls was pretty realistic.
That's because it was a real guy!
Mark, was that...
We see that the Matrix, the augmented reality in the Matrix, is false. And this is what's going to happen to humanity. They're going to be pushed into the augmented reality, losing touch with what God had originally created and falling into a fantasy world created by Satan to be a replacement to them for the real world that God had created for us.
I thought other people were creating this virtual reality, not Satan. So, who's the Satan figure here?
And it's going to be promising fun and games and excitement and new special powers and abilities. Just come. Satan's going to tempt them, and the majority of the world will fall for the trap, plugging themselves into, damning themselves to hell for eternity into the Matrix.
And commandment number 11. Thou shalt not plug thyself into a world of virtual reality. For there Satan is thine admin, and Decision 9 virtual currency.
Yeah, would it kill you to slow down a bit? I'm carving this shit in stone because somebody decided it'd take another 2,000 years to invent Microsoft Word.
These technologies are being rolled out right now. You might be familiar with the Oculus Rift. This is just this, okay? In the Matrix, they're plugged in their brain. Well, okay, today we don't have a chip just yet, but we're putting these boxes over our head, and in no time, they're going to be rolling out new technology that is going to be right in the brain. In fact, these technologies are being worked on right now. You can go ahead and research neural interfaces that are brain chips. They basically put them in your brain, and it's like having an Oculus Rift in your mind.
Gotta love how you don't cite any sources for this. I looked up this neural interface thing, and the ones I found, at least regarding information for ones that are furthest along in testing, had nothing to do with video games. You seem to be talking about invasive brain-computer interfaces, and the ones that are furthest along in testing are to help treat blindness and restore control of limbs. Are you trying to say that restoring blindness with an invasive neural interface is a virtual reality? Because if that's what you're trying to say, then dude, go fuck yourself. Restoring a medical condition is not the same as immersing yourself in a fucking video game. And if you can't see that, then you're a fucking dumbass.
And by the way, no dumb shit, that's not an Oculus Rift in your mind. That's a hippocampal prosthesis, which is literally just an experimental artificial replacement for the part of your brain that processes emotions, links names with faces, and helps form memories. But oh, why must we play God by recreating parts of the human brain? Well, simply put, it's because damage to the hippocampus is believed to be a major cause of Alzheimer's, you twit! This is, of course, ignoring the fact that it's still completely experimental and isn't actually a thing yet, not the least of which because it won't work unless we were somehow able to create a silicon neuron interface that could translate neural impulses to digital signals and vice versa, which, spoiler, we haven't invented yet! The technology around which your entire Matrix conspiracy theory hinges doesn't even exist! It doesn't even take that much time to figure this out. I literally put this still image into a Google image search, got results for hippocampal prosthesis, and looked up the details on Wikipedia. That's literally all I had to do to catch you in a lie. You shouldn't be making it this easy!
So these technologies are coming, and look at all these people, okay? Mark Zuckerberg is
2 hours later. Mark Zuckerberg
trying to shove humanity in a soulless cybernetic trap. And here they are. Look at this. Look, losing touch with reality. Plugging right in. Do you see this? Open your eyes, people. They're showing you, look, plugged into a false reality. And here's Mark Zuckerberg plugging people into the Matrix. This is not good, okay? This is bad. This is something that we need to recognize. A lot of the world's leaders, in fact, have said, Elon Musk and other very prominent scientists and leading intellectuals in the world, who I don't agree with all of them on every point, but they did strongly warn us, humanity, this is bad. Stop merging yourself with technology. Technology is going to overtake us. I mean, it's just common sense.
Elon Musk has said no such thing. On the contrary, he said we're likely already living in a computer simulation. Now, I've got endless respect for the real-world Tony Stark, don't get me wrong, but I can't help but feel like his statements in that regard are a little overblown. The only thing he has directly warned us about is the ongoing advancement of artificial intelligence and the possibility that, one day, our computers won't need us anymore. Less, I know Kung Fu, more, I'll be back.
Last I checked, nobody is merging themselves with stuff like the Oculus Rift or their smartphones. Also, the stuff like the interfaces from Cyberkinetics is meant to treat various medical conditions.
But that's okay, because the elite don't care about us, and they want us to be completely mind-controlled.
Which is why companies like Cyberkinetics, BrainGate, and BlackRock Microsystems are making these interfaces, right?
In the augmented reality, this false reality that doesn't even exist, which is being introduced by Pokemon Go.
6 minutes into this video and I just realized something. You've barely talked about Pokemon Go at all. It's almost as if you don't know jack shit about the app itself, haven't done any research into what it is and how it works, and are jumping to conclusions based on your own Neanderthalic paranoias about modern technology. But that'd never be the case, would it?
So you play your little game, and how it works is your GPS will pick up certain locations, and you'll see stuff in the physical that is not there.
Nope, I was right.
Cyber. Now remember, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers. I believe this is something very spiritual, okay? Church, listen. They are starting to open up what I believe is the veil. This is going to allow things to come into our reality. When man goes into this new realm, this augmented realm, we don't know what we're traversing into. We have never explored this, and I don't believe God equipped us to go in these areas.
There is no new realm, you absolute fucking dunce!
It's literally just cartoon characters being overlaid onto your smartphone screen. That's it. This technology has been around literally for years. I own an AR-enabled device, and it's a goddamn toy. You're afraid of toys, you sheltered, inbred buffoon.
Jeez, Sigma, chill!
I am a fire type. I literally have no chill.
Now, could this be a good thing? Absolutely, of course it could. But the problem is, our world is controlled by sick and twisted people who don't have our best interest at hand.
This is the closest you've come to a legitimate point, but as usual, your interpretation of it is completely off the mark. The people in power who don't have our best interests at heart, not in hand, how do you fuck up such a simple idiom? Are our politicians, well, most of them anyway. And it's not because they have some big, evil, mustache-twirling plan to reduce the world to a herd of mindless slaves. It's because they're a bunch of greedy bastards who will do anything they can to make sure they've got the cushiest life they can manage, and they don't care who they hurt in the process. They don't hate you. They don't want to destroy you. They just don't care. Apathy is the enemy, not some nebulous shadow organization whose existence is limited to a trashy thriller novel. Quit deluding yourself, stop acting like a child, and start trying to actually help people. That is what the world needs, not this bullshit. Look, I'm done with this. All he does from this point on is repeat the same bullshit he started this video with and then ramble on about how Pokemon is, oh my god, to Satan, and we're all gonna die and go to hell. There's really no point in both of us covering it.
More for me, then.
They want us as slaves. They want us with little chips in our brains so that they can do what they want, right? If they have a chip in your mind and that chip can then access certain regions of your brain and control you, you're done.
And this is just one reason why there are plenty of people in the world who aren't transhumanists, and indeed plenty who don't even know what transhumanism is.
This pushes this augmented reality and brainwashes the masses to think it's the coolest thing and jump right in trying to find their little pocket monsters. By the way, this is a pocket demon, a pocket monster. Monster's another word for demon.
According to the thesaurus, they can be synonymous. According to the etymologies behind each word, however, monster, Middle English monster, from Latin monstrum, portent, monster, from monere, to warn. Demon, Middle English, from late Latin daemon, from Latin spirit, from Greek daemon, divine power. Yeah, two different words with different connotations there.
So as everyone's chasing around their little pocket demons, they're going into the augmented reality to look for pocket demons. Do you realize, church, the significance of that?
Monster, noun. An imaginary or legendary creature such as a centaur or harpy that combines parts from various animal or human forms. A creature having a strange or frightening appearance. An organism that has structural defects or deformities. A very large animal, plant, or object. One who inspires horror or disgust. Nowhere in this definition is there a religious connotation. Shut up!
Think about that. Pocket demons going into an alternate reality to find these things? Wake up. Thanks for taking the time. Tune back in. I did a great Bible study on how to draw nearer to God. I'll leave that linked up in the description section. Encourage you to definitely check that out.
Yeah, all the links are plugs. No sources of any kind to back up any of his bullshit arguments. Lovely.
Join me on the Bible study where we're going to be looking at studying the Word of God together. This is the most important thing that we can do in these times because this is all Bible prophecy. God warned us about this. He warned us that in the end times, man would become extremely deceived. And one of the deceptions is believing that we can be like God, that we could give ourselves eternal life by merging ourselves with technology and augmenting ourselves. And this is a massive, massive deception.
A small fraction of transhumanists want that, and very few of us actually identify as transhumanists.
Thanks for taking the time, everyone. This is TPC saying God bless each and every one of you. As always, stay vigilant and fear no evil.
What'd I tell you? Grade A nutcase.
I've seen worse, but he's by far the worst I've ever bothered to commentate on.
After you defeat all
Nice
the
to know
gym
you
leaders,
learned one
collect
thing
all
in the
gym
past couple of
badges.
months.
You set
Too
your
bad learning to
sights on
sit farther away from the
ultimate
camera, it's such a
challenge,
small
the Elite
detail in the
Four.
grand scheme of
However,
making
some of the Elite
videos.
Four aren't always so challenging. As a matter of fact, some of them just aren't challenging at all.
This will come up later, and I will have a lot to say about it.
But some of them just fall short of the mark. But which Elite Four members are the worst in battle? With so many Elite Four members to choose from, there's no way I could have done this by myself. That's right, my special guest, Tamashii Hiroka, who's also a huge Pokemon fan that's been doing Pokemon videos for years on YouTube.
And whose video quality seems to have dropped in recent times, judging by how bad the other quote-unquote collaborative top 10 list between you two was.
Is here to help me count down the worst Elite Four members. I'm going to be listing off my top 5 worst, and she's going to be listing off her top 5 worst.
Meaning it's just 2 top 5 lists put together to artificially make a top 10 list, and that we won't know who's number 10 and who's number 9 and who's better than who and so on. At least that's one less thing I'll have to cover in my final thoughts.
So, without further ado, let's get it started. I'm starting off my worst Elite Four picks with Chantal from Pokemon Black and White. She's a bookworm who always enjoys reading a good novel, like 50 Shades of Pokemon Gray. Since, you know, she's in Pokemon Black and White, Gray. Oh, never mind.
Oh, so you realized it was a stupid joke that you kept it in this video anyways. I understand that humor is subjective, but if you're willing to acknowledge that a joke is stupid, isn't that a sign that you should leave that joke out? Please don't make me play the Akroloth clip explaining that acknowledging a problem isn't the same as fixing it.
The Elite Four in Pokemon Black and White were some of the strongest members we'd seen in a while. However, Chantal just didn't seem to fit in with the difficulty of the other 3 members. She specializes in Ghost-type Pokemon, much like Agatha did in the first generation. But with Dark-type Pokemon like Crocodile on your team, you had nothing to worry about in this battle. Literally, all you had to do was spam Crunch, or any other powerful Dark-type move, and you would sweep her entire team very quickly.
The problem with your statement of using a Dark-type Pokemon is that good Dark-type options were limited in the Gen 5 games. What if you were using a different Ground-type on your team and didn't want to use Crocodile? You were stuck with either the Purloin line, the Scraggy line, the Zorua line, the Pawniard line, the Vullaby line, or the Dino line. Lightbird isn't very good, Scraggy takes a long time to train and evolve, Pawniard takes an even longer time to train and evolve, and you find it later in the game, Zorua may not be available depending on which game you're playing, same with Vullaby for different reasons. If Vullaby is available, you won't be able to get it until around the time you reach the final gym. Dino and Svilas can't be caught until Victory Road. I've used Svilas on my team to fight the Elite Four in White in the past. It was hard. And if you do want to grind it to evolve into a Hydreigon before taking on the Elite Four, good luck grinding it up to level 64. Also, even if you do use Crocodile in your team as your Dark-type mon to deal with Chantal's Ghost types, her Pokemon will give your Crocodile a hard time. Cofagrigus has Grass Knot and Will-O-Wisp. Grass Knot uses Cofagrigus' decent special attack, and Crocodile's special defense is fairly low, meaning it will hurt. A lot. And Will-O-Wisp will be a pain in your ass because burns mean your Crunch will do a lot less damage thanks to burns lowering attack, and Crunch using the attacker's attack stat to determine damage. And with how bulky Cofagrigus is already, there's no way your Crocodile is going to take it out in one hit unless you're over-leveled and or you crit. Meaning that Cofagrigus will probably get an attack in on you unless you get a critical hit. Its Grass Knot is replaced with Energy Ball in her rematch team, which has a chance of lowering Crocodile's special defense even further. Regarding Jellicent, not only is Jellicent part water, but it has Cursed Body as an ability, meaning there's the 30% chance that your Crunch spamming will come to a screeching halt for a few turns thanks to Cursed Body disabling the move. Golurk has Brick Break as an attack, and Golurk's attack stat is quite good. Crocodile will be in a lot of pain from that. Rematches replace Brick Break with Hammer Arm, which does even more damage, and it has Iron Fist as an ability, which makes it even more powerful. Chandelure has Flame Body as an ability, meaning that if Cofagrigus didn't get to burn Crocodile with Will-O-Wisp, attacking Chandelure with Crunch will most likely get it burned. And Frostlass becomes the new addition to Chantal's rematch team. Hi Blizzard! Her team in Black 2 and White 2 replaces Jellicent with Driftblim, but Cofagrigus and Golurk are still there to give you trouble. And Chandelure is made even more difficult to deal with thanks to Chandelure knowing Energy Ball. And in her rematch team in the sequel games, Frostlass comes back. I've used Crocodile on my team against Chantal. It was nowhere near as easy as you make it out to be.
At least Agatha had a little diversity with poison types like Arbok on her team. That way they weren't all ghost types. That made her more of a challenge compared to Chantal.
Agatha Agatha's team was not more diverse than Chantal's. Despite Agatha being a Ghost-type trainer, the Ghastly evolutionary line were the only Ghost-type mons available at the time, and all three shared Poison as their secondary type. You know what types Arbok and Golbat, the other two Pokemon on their team, shared? Poison! If you had a Psychic-type Pokemon on your team, you had no problems whatsoever with Agatha, since you actually could just spam Psychic and wipe the floor with her team. In fact, I would go further and argue that Agatha's team is less diverse than Chantal's, because all of Agatha's mons share a poison typing, which she's supposed to be a Ghost-type trainer. Arbok was pure poison, and Golbat was part flying, which didn't do much for it since its fly-type attack move in the Gen 1 games was Wind Attack, which wasn't all that powerful, and it didn't have any offensive poison moves to take advantage of Poison's same-type attack bonus in the Gen 1 games. It got Air Cutter and Poison Fang and Fire Red and Leaf Green, and it evolved into a Crobat and a rematch team in those games while replacing Poison Fang with Sludge Bomb, but that really doesn't do much for it in the grand scheme of things. It may have gotten moves to help with Psychic-type mons in both teams, and it may be more powerful as a Crobat, but that doesn't change the fact that it's still weak to Psychic, Electric, Rock, and Ice-type moves, which you probably have most, if not all, covered in your team. Furthermore, all but one Pokemon on a rematch team continue to share the Poison typing. That one mon that wasn't part Poison in a rematch team? Misdreavus, which only makes sense given its pure Ghost typing and that she's supposed to be the Ghost-type user of the Kanto Elite Four. Also, each mon in Chantal's team had a secondary type that no other member of her team shared with it. With the exceptions of Coffagrigus, since Coffagrigus is a pure Ghost type, Banette, which was a second pure Ghost type that she had in her first team in Black 2 and White 2 if you played through its challenge mode, and Miss Magius, another pure Ghost type mon which she had on a rematch team if you played through Black 2 and White 2 on easy mode or normal mode. I'm detecting a bias in favor of the Kanto games here.
Plus, Agatha lives with graves in her room. Now that's hardcore. And Chantal? She probably lives with her collection of Twilight books.
Okay, even if this was just a stupid joke, I still have to say this. You know why Chantal's room is a dimly lit library? Because dark settings and atmospheres are a common element of horror novels and gothic novels, like Frankenstein, Dracula, and The Castle of Otranto, just to name a few examples. The Twilight series, in spite of their supernatural element, are not gothic novels, nor are they horror novels. And even if you only brought up 50 Shades for a stupid pun earlier on, I'd still like to point out that the 50 Shades books apply even less, since they don't even have a supernatural element to them. Granted, they are unintentionally horrifying, but that's another matter. Really, dude, if you're gonna crack jokes about how she allegedly has bad taste in books, at least use examples from the relevant genres. I'm a bookworm, can't you tell?
Number 5, Will. My pick for number 5, Will, has a lot going for him. He has a cool outfit, he's the first ever to represent Psychic types in the Elite Four, and he's got purple hair. But considering he's repping Psychic types in Gen 2, the ones he ended up with are a little disappointing. He has mostly Gen 1 Pokemon on his team, and the Gen 2 Pokemon he has is just Xatu twice. He could have at least tried out an Espeon or something.
I'll give you the point that Espeon or any other pure Psychic type mon would have worked better in his team than a second Xatu. Even Girafarig would have worked better. At least then Will would have had a mon with an immunity to Ghost type moves.
But instead, he's left with Pokemon we've seen before.
Okay, let's look at the Psychic-type Pokemon that were introduced in Gen 2. Not counting the Not-So-evolutionary line since he has two Xatu on his team, nor Lugia and Celebi since they're legendaries. Espeon, Slowcane, Unknown, Wobbuffet, Girafarig, and Smoochum. Smoochum evolves into Jinx, so Will having a Jinx on his team actually works in that regard. I've already mentioned how Girafarig could have worked. Wobbuffet's style of fighting by pure retaliation is tricky to work with in the Gen 2 games. Unknown would be extremely difficult to use in battle since the only move it can never know is Hidden Power, and that move depends on individual values to determine its typing. It can be debated that Slowking would work better on his team than Slowbro, but the only difference is that Slowbro has a higher defense than special defense, while those stats are flipped for Slowking. And I already gave you credit regarding Espeon, since Espeon actually is a good pure Psychic type mon. But regarding your complaints about how the majority of the Pokemon on his team are mons we've seen before, that can also apply to any of the other Johto Elite Four members. You could argue that it doesn't work that well for Koga since only 2 of the 5 mons on his team are Kanto mons, but I would counter with the fact that Koga is a Johto Elite 4 member in the first place, given that he was the Fuchsia gym leader in the previous games. Also, of course Johto trainers would have Kanto mons, given that all those Kanto mons are obtainable in the Johto region. Never mind the fact that Kanto is literally connected to Johto, and that you go through the Kanto region after defeating the Johto Elite Four, so your complaints about Will having Pokemon we've seen before does not work.
Considering he's the first member of the Johto Elite Four, he doesn't really leave you with much new to remember him by. His sprite is almost just a recolor of Lorelai's, the first member of the Gen 1 Elite Four.
Male trainer, short purple hair, mask, funny suit. Female trainer, long red hair tied back in a ponytail, glasses, simple shirt and skirt. Totally a recolor, guys!
And he even has a Slowbro and a Jinx like her too. Will just kinda seems like they were in a hurry, so they gave Lorelai a different name and switched up as few party members as they could get away with to give the team a new typing. Not a great first impression.
You do realize that your complaint of supposed laziness could also apply to their use of Koga and Bruno as Johto Elite Four members, right? Given that in their case they actually did just recycle prominent trainers from the previous games?
In Generation 3, Sydney is the first member of the Hoenn Elite Four. He's an upbeat person who enjoys what he does, even if he loses. He uses a team of Dark-type Pokemon. In the original games, his team was okay, but in the remake of Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, with the introduction of Fairy types, Sydney became a total pushover, especially with Mega Evolution. All you really need is any Fairy-type Pokemon on your team that can Mega Evolve and knows Moonblast.
Complaining that any Mega Evolving Fairy type with Moonblast can sweep through Sydney's new team, despite the fact that any good Fighting type could sweep through Sydney's old team. The only mons in his old team that have any counters against Fighting type Pokemon are Shiftry, who has Extra Sensory, and Absol, who has Aerial Ace. Even with that in mind, if you have Blaziken as your Fighting type on your team, Shiftry and Absol will still be dealt with before they can do any real damage, thanks to the fact that Blaziken is faster than Absol, and might be faster than Shiftry depending on its nature and or whether or not you bothered EV training it to boost its speed. There's also the fact that Shiftry and Absol have low defensive stats, meaning that even if either of them do get the first hit in, they won't last for very long. Even if you're instead using Medicham, Hariyama, or possibly even Breloom as your Fighting type Pokemon instead of Blaziken. Blaziken can even take care of Sharpedo or Crawdont, the part water type mon he has on his team. Sharpedo if you're playing Ruby or Sapphire, Crawdont if you're playing Emerald. Sharpedo may be faster than Blaziken, but even with Blaziken not being able to take many hits, I doubt Sharpedo Surf will take Blaziken out in one hit unless it gets a well-timed crit. And Sharpedo's defenses are abysmal, meaning that any decent Fighting type attack from Blaziken will take Sharpedo out in one hit. Crawdont is bulkier than Sharpedo, but it's also slower, meaning that Blaziken will get the first hit. And like with Sharpedo, unless Crawdont crits, Crawdont Surf probably won't one-hit Blaziken. And if you're using a different Fighting type Pokemon, Sydney is even more screwed since no other Fighting types in Hoenn are weak to water.
And the battle would be over in a matter of minutes. You would have thought that they would have mixed up his team a little bit more to compensate for the new Fairy type. Instead, he became one of the easiest Elite Four members of all time.
You mean like how they could have updated Agatha's team in Fire Red and Leaf Green to account for more Ghost-type Pokemon and Ghost-types actually being able to put up a fight against Psychic types, but still only had 3 of her Mons be Ghost-type and all but 1 Poison, and 1 Mon on each for teams not having to move strong against Psychic types? At least Sydney had 2 Mons each in his rematch team with Poison, Psychic, and Flying moves to cover all of their weaknesses.
Number 4. Bertha. Bertha, the Gen 4 Ground-type Elite Four member, actually has a lot of Pokemon I like on her team. Hippowdon, Sudowoodo,
which is a pure Rock-type Pokemon, meaning it has even more weaknesses, and it's not present in her Platinum team.
Quagsire,
which she also doesn't have on her Platinum team.
That other Water Ground type.
Whiscash, which is the sole Water Ground type on her Platinum team.
But her real crime, repetitive typings aside...
Repetitive typings aside... Yeah, you know who else your argument of repetitive typing to type overlap can apply to? Agatha and Lance. Yes, you heard me right. Lance. The argument regarding type overlap of Agatha's Pokemon also applies to Lance. The Dratini evolutionary line were the only Dragon types available in the original games, meaning that he had to fall back on Gyarados and Aerodactyl to fill out his team, both of which shared a secondary flying type with Dragonite, meaning that all but one of his Pokemon are weak to ice, Gyarados being that one thanks to it being part water. Even if you didn't have an ice type on your team, chances are that you had a water type that knew Ice Beam, and you probably had an electric type or a Pokemon that otherwise had Thunderbolt as an attack to take care of Gyarados. Lance's situation really didn't improve in the Gen 2 games due to the fact that the only Dragon type Pokemon added to the Johto Pokedex was Kingdra. Lance does have an edge over Agatha, however. At least his non-Dragon type Pokemon all have draconic appearances to make them fit into his team that way, unlike Agatha's Arbok and Golbat, who are far from ghost-like and are apparently only on her team because snakes and bats are supposed to be spooky. Lance had a fairly prominent presence outside of the Pokemon League in the Johto games. Lance's rematch team in Fire Red and Leaf Green evolved one Dragonair and replaced the other with Kingdra, and his rematch team in Heart Gold and Soul Silver replaced two of his Dragonites with Salamence and Altaria, and his Aerodactyl was replaced with Garchomp. That said, it makes all but two of his rematch mons in Heart Gold and Soul Silver double weak to Ice-type attacks. And those two Pokemon that aren't double weak to Ice attacks are Gyarados and Charizard, which he had on his initial team. Your complaints about repetitive typing applies to both Agatha and Lance, yet neither of them appear on your list, nor Brandon's list. How come Agatha and Lance get a pass, yet Chantal and Bertha were thrown in despite having less problems with their team than Agatha and Lance do?
It's just that she isn't very memorable. Elite Four members have a really short time to leave a lasting impression, which means that what little we have to go off of counts way more than it would for most any other NPC. From appearance to dialogue to party members, each aspect has to wow us for them to stick out in our minds, or else we'll move on and forget we even battled them.
You mean that a kindly grandmother type of an old lady who still doesn't hesitate to kick your ass in battle and probably did kick your ass in battle didn't leave a lasting impression? How high are your standards?
Unfortunately for Bertha, it feels like her sprite was copy-pasted from Agatha.
Never mind that Bertha looks a lot nicer and less like a mean old crone than Agatha does.
And her dialogue was copy-pasted from Karen, which doesn't leave much room for her to stand out on her own. With just her ragtag team of ground types to rely on for staying power, she ends up getting washed out in the sandstorm.
Are you serious? You're really just complaining about her sprite and dialogue now? In that case, why not complain about Lorelei, who didn't have any memorable dialogue, or Koga, who changed very little from his time as Fuchsia Gym Leader in the previous games, or Bruno, who didn't change at all from his time as an Elite Four member in the Gen 1 games to his time as an Elite Four member in the Gen 2 games?
Going back to the beginning, the very first Elite Four member we ever faced was Lorelei. She's a master of the Ice-type Pokemon, but the problem with her team was that she had mostly part Water types, which led to her having a huge disadvantage against Electric-type Pokemon.
Dewgong, Ice Water, Cloyster, Ice Water, Jinx, Ice Psychic, Lapras, Ice Water, Articuno, Ice Flying. It's inevitable that she'd have a lot of water types on her team when there were only 5 Ice-type evolutionary lines in the Gen 1 games, 3 of which were part water type, and 1 she wouldn't have been able to have to begin with because it was a legendary.
Because of this, anyone with a Raichu or a Jolteon,
or Pikachu if you were playing yellow,
except for Jinx. At that point, all you'd need is a fire type to take it out.
Taking out Lorelei's team is not as easy as you make it out to be. You know what all of her part water type Pokemon have in common? They're all bulky. Although Cloyster's bulk is in physical defense, meaning it would be an easy takedown for electric-type Pokemon in the Kanto games. However, Slowbro's special defense is passable, and Dewgong's special defense is pretty good. Same with Lapras, which in its case is aided by its phenomenal HP. And Dewgong, Slowbro, and Lapras all have moves to give electric-type Pokemon a hard time. Dewgong has Rest, in the Gen 1 games at least, that was taken out in the Gen 3 remakes. Slowbro has Amnesia, and Lapras has Confuse Ray. Granted, it loses Confuse Ray and Lorelei's rematch team in Gen 3, but its bulk means it'll still take a bit of time to bring it down anyways.
At least after the Sevi Islands, they gave her a Piloswine to make her a little tougher, but that still doesn't help her too much, as she still has way too many part water types on her team.
And that Piloswine replaces her Slowbro, meaning every single mon on her rematch team is part Ice type. You could argue that they should have had Hoenn Pokemon to choose from, but even the Sevi Islands only have Kanto and Johto Pokemon. If you want Hoenn Pokemon, you have to trade for them. So of course the Elite Four's rematch teams won't have any Hoenn Pokemon. But even if they did have Hoenn Pokemon to choose from, the only real options she would have are Glalie, which is a pure Ice type, and Walrein, which is an Ice Water type. You could make a case for Cast Form, but then that Cast Form would need Hail in its moveset for it to change it to an Ice type since it's normal type by default. Regice is another legendary, so she wouldn't have access to that anyways, meaning that either way, she would have secondary type overlap either through part water or through the lack of any secondary type.
Number 3, Glacia. The Gen 3 Elite Four is one of my favorites. They're stylish, they're edgy, and Glacia is no exception. My only issue with her is the fact that while her colleagues might have a repeating species here and there, Glacia only has 2 species of Pokemon at all, the Snow-Right line and the Spheal line.
Because they're the only Ice types available in Hoenn besides Regice.
Gen 3 to pick from, but maybe at that point they should have realized having an Ice-type Elite Four member when you only have 2 Ice types in your regional decks was a bad idea, and just picked a different type and built a more interesting team for her. Even if they had gone with Grass type, she would have had more variety.
But a Grass-type Elite Four member arguably would have been an even easier battle. Despite grass having more resistances than ice, grass also has more weaknesses than ice. Also, if you're really relying on the small amount of ice types in Hoenn as an argument for why Glacia isn't a good Elite Four member, then why aren't you complaining about Agatha being a Ghost-type Elite Four member, and Lance being a Dragon-type Elite Four member respectively in Kanto, when Kanto only has one evolutionary line each of Ghost-type and Dragon-type Pokemon?
Glacia might have looks and charm, but an interesting team she does not.
You're missing two details about Glacia and about the Hoenn region that I think are quite important in figuring out Glacia's choice of team. You know why there are so few Ice-type Pokemon in the Hoenn region? Because Hoenn is a tropical region. You know why Glacia has an Ice-type team in spite of that? Because she's not from Hoenn. She's from a different region and presumably trained with ice types before traveling to Hoenn. It can be safe to assume that she became an Elite Four member because, despite having very few ice-type Pokemon to work with in Hoenn, she worked with the options she had and kicked many trainers' asses. And I think the Hoenn Pokemon League had another good reason to have Glacia, a trainer specializing in ice types, as a member of their Elite Four. Like I said, Hoenn is a tropical region. With that in mind, I can imagine that there are plenty of Hoenn trainers who wouldn't give much thought on how to deal with Ice-type Pokemon because there are so few of them in the region. But to the Pokemon League, that doesn't matter, because as a trainer, you have to know how to deal with every Pokemon type, regardless of how rare they are. You see, this is the kind of stuff you think about when you keep in mind the fact that Pokemon, first and foremost, is an RPG. Players are meant to focus on the setting, world building, and characters first and foremost. Your complaints about Glacia completely missed the point of her character.
Flint from Gen 4 is a Fire-type master who looks like Ronald McDonald's long-lost cousin. Being a Fire-type master, you'd think he uses nothing but Fire types, right? Well, not in Diamond and Pearl. In those games he had a bit more variety on his team, with a Steelix, Lopunny, and a Drifbloom, which made him pretty challenging.
Yeah, despite being advertised as the Fire-type Elite Four member, only 2 out of the 5 mons he used in Diamond and Pearl were Fire-type. Do you really not see the problem with that? If they're advertised as using one type of Pokemon on their team, the majority of their team, if not their entire team, should have that type. So in that respect, adding more Fire-type Pokemon in Platinum and giving Flint more Fire types to work with is a good thing.
However, in Pokemon Platinum, they nerfed him to the ground, giving him all Fire types to battle with, leaving his team totally weak to any Water type with Surf.
Okay, they could have done better than to make 3 out of the 5 mons on his Platinum team pure Fire types, but there were very few choices of Fire type mons in the Sinnoh games. In Platinum, your only choices of Fire type mons were the Chimchar line, the Ponyta line, Flareon, the Houndour line, or the Magby line. If you're not against using legendaries, there's also Heatran, but that may or may not count since you can't catch it until after you beat the Elite Four, regardless of which Sinnoh game you're playing. If you're playing Diamond and Pearl and you want Flareon, Houndoom, or Magmortar, you can't get any of them until after you beat the Elite Four either, meaning that if you want to raise a Fire-type mon for your team early on but don't want Chimchar as your starter, you're stuck with raising a Ponyta and evolving it into Rapidash. Expanding the Sinnoh Pokedex in Platinum to include more Fire types to catch early on, and giving Flint a full team of Fire-type mons is basically Game Freak's way of admitting they made a mistake and fixing that mistake. I could see what they were going for, but their fixes in Platinum says they initially went too far with it. There still aren't many Fire-type mons, but you know why that is? Because Sinnoh is based on the northern Japanese island of Hokkaido, meaning that Sinnoh is a colder region than the others, meaning that Sinnoh isn't going to have many Fire-type Pokemon anyways.
It's like he went from being a Big Mac to a hot and spicy. It's just not as satisfying. Whoever thought this was a good idea really needs to be fired.
Chugga Conroy, you are not. Also, regarding your complaint about how they nerfed Flint by making his team all Fire types, they offset that by giving him a second mon that knows Solar Beam. Given that 2 of his mons know Sunny Day, and that his Infernape still knows Thunder Punch, his overall team can give Water types, Ground types, and Rock types an even harder time. So it's easy to argue that they actually made his team better.
Number 2, Bruno. Bruno, unlike most Elite Four members, got a second chance to prove himself. As a member of both the Gen 1 and Gen 2 Elite Four, he has twice as many lines and battles as any other Elite Four member. And how does he use this precious extra chance for an impression? By saying basically the same thing both times and being the shortest and easiest battle in both of his Elite Four lineups. Bruno, Bruno, Bruno. Most Elite Four members would kill for the screen time you got, and you squandered it.
Really? That's all you have to say about the Elite Four member that's taken up the number 2 spot on your list? That he wasted his screen time and was an easy fight no matter which game you played? You didn't even complain about his teams, and that actually could have made for a really good argument to use to explain his placement on your list. Unlike Agatha and Lance, Bruno had no excuse of not having enough mons of his type to choose from. Each Elite Four member in Gen 1 had 5 mons on their teams. Bruno had enough to choose from that he could have had an entire team of fighting-type Pokemon. Replace his 2 Onix with Poliwrath and Primeape. There you go. It's only worse in Gen 2, given that he still had 1 Onix on his team. He replaced the other with Hitmontop, yet he kept 1 despite having the choice between Primeape, Poliwrath, and Heracross to replace it. Even if the only fighting-type moves Heracross could learn in Gen 2 were Counter, Reversal, and Rock Smash, that doesn't change the fact that it's still a fighting-type mon that Bruno could have chosen for his team. Yet he still kept that damn Onix. Also, how did you miss the fact that thanks to Chuck, another fighting-type specialist being one of the Johto gym leaders, Bruno's return to the Elite Four was completely redundant? Granted, that would also rule out both Lorelei and Agatha coming back due to Price and Morty being Johto gym leaders, but they couldn't have come up with a new character, possibly related to one of the Johto or Kanto gym leaders, that used a different type? They could have used a trainer that used ground, rock, water, electric, grass, or fire. But nope, they just took the easy way out and brought Bruno back. Even in his rematch team in Fire Red and Leaf Green, he kept both Onix and evolved them. At least in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, he got rid of that other Onix so his rematch team had all fighting types. This is only saying to me that you and Brandon didn't bother doing any sort of research to put together this list. And we still got their number 1 picks to get through. This is gonna hurt.
And my number 1 pick for the worst Elite Four member is Malva. Everyone should have seen this one coming.
Are you fucking kidding me? Are you seriously picking an Elite Four member from X and Y to put at the top of your list? We haven't even gotten Pokemon Z yet. We don't know what they're doing besides giving Zygarde more forms, and as far as we know, they could also be fixing stuff they messed up in X and Y, including making the Elite Four members more challenging battles, and maybe doing more stuff with Team Flare. I thought you two were jumping the gun in your top 10 worst X and Y Pokemon list, but this just removes all doubt. You really should have waited until the 3rd game to make this fucking list. Damn you people!
The Pokemon X and Y Elite Four were by far the easiest to beat, especially for someone with an all-fire type team like this. Her entire team can be knocked out by a good water type with Surf, even without Mega Evolution. Now if that isn't easy, I don't know what is. This is the same problem that all fire type trainers have.
I already explained why your argument that Flint is a crappy Elite Four member was bullshit, but go on.
It reminds me so much of how easy Blaine was in Pokemon Red and Blue.
And they made his team more challenging in Yellow. Did you forget about that?
But this is an Elite Four member. They're supposed to be a challenge, not pushovers. These people aren't elite at all, and they don't deserve to be there. I hope that in the next new Pokemon game, they bring back the challenge.
So you're acknowledging the possibility that they might get better in the new game? Then why did you put Malva on your list in the first place?
Because I was very disappointed with how easy all the Kalos Elite Four were. All of them really deserve to be on this list.
Let me explain something to you. You know why the Kalos Elite Four seems so easy compared to the Elite Four of other regions? Because the EXP share was changed. In Gen 1, it was an item called the EXP All that shared experience equally between all party members. However, it meant that even mons that did participate in the battle didn't get as much EXP as they would have if you didn't have the EXP All with you. Also, unlike subsequent generations, any Pokemon that didn't participate in the battle didn't gain the stat experience, otherwise known as effort values, that it would have gained if it participated in the battle. Meaning that if you used the EXP All, it was impossible for underleveled Pokemon on your team to play catch up with your higher level mons. Also, if you wanted to raise a team quickly in Gen 1, you were better off using the missing number glitch to get a fuck ton of rare candies and stat boosting vitamins and speed raising your team that way. From Gen 2 to Gen 5, the EXP share was a held item, meaning that sharing the EXP points gained from beating various trainers would only apply to one Pokemon at a time, and that Pokemon happened to be whichever Pokemon was holding the EXP share at that time. Starting with X and Y, however, the EXP share was changed into a key item that you could turn on or off. When it was turned on, every Pokemon in your party that didn't participate in the battle gained half of the EXP and all of the effort values that mons who participated in that battle gained. So it took the best of the EXP All and the previous incarnation of the EXP share, meaning that there's no real downside to leaving it on all the time. meaning that you, like many other players, probably never had the EXP share turned off, meaning that it's very easy to overlevel the Pokemon on your team. Meaning that by that late in the game, your team is probably overleveled to the point that the Elite Four would be an easy takedown. Really, your complaints about the Elite Four being too easy just calls to attention a bigger issue with X and Y. If you leave your EXP share on all the time, your team will probably be overleveled, and as a result, the game will be too easy. If you leave the EXP share off, however, your team will probably be underleveled, and as a result, the game will be too hard. Good luck if you want to find a nice middle road, because finding out the perfect on periods and off periods is practically an art form you'd have to master, and it would take up too much time. You might as well just deal with the fact that X and Y unintentionally give you two difficulty settings, easy mode and challenge mode, without presenting a good middle ground. Really, you're just skirting over a much bigger issue with those games, and turning the Kalos Elite Four into scapegoats. Knock that shit off!
But at the end of the day, Malva to me is the weakest Elite Four member.
So basically what you're saying is that the sole factor you looked at when putting together your worst Elite Four members list is how powerful they were in battle? Oh, never mind how they present themselves as characters, or how many of them actually did shit outside of the Pokemon League, like Lorelei, who had a role to play in the Sevii Islands and Fire Red and Leaf Green, or Flint, who appeared outside of the League building a few times in Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum, or Caitlyn, who is the head of the Battle Frontiers Battle Castle in Platinum, Heart Gold, and Soul Silver, or Malva, who used to be a member of Team Flare and also works as a Holocaster news reporter. Maybe we might find out more about Malva in the new game. See, there is absolutely no reason for Malva to be on this list, much less at the top of this list, since there's still so much we could potentially find out about her. So really, this just says to me that you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. So how about you do us all a favor and
shut the fuck up!
And my number one least favorite Elite Four member is Siegebold.
Excuse me for a moment. Dear sweet Arceus, are you fucking
Let me tell you something about the Gen 6 Elite Four. It sucks. Nobody has more than 4 Pokemon.
You mean like the Unova Elite Four when they first started out?
It's one of the only ways in the post-game to grind for levels and cash.
Just money grind at the Battle Chateau or Lumio City's restaurants. It's much easier. Did you know that?
There are no Pokemon Centers in the first 2 towns of the game after you finish, so you have to walk your ass to Aquacord just to use the PC box and get a Pokemon that can fly.
Oh, boo fucking who, you gotta run through more areas in order to access the nearest PC and get a flyer. Not that big a deal, you petty bitch.
Just so you can go back and fight the same battles over and over and over again.
You can make similar arguments about the Elite Four in Red, Blue, Yellow, Gold, Silver, Crystal, Ruby, and Sapphire. Having to walk to Viridian City, Cherry Grove City, or Oldale Town if you don't have a flyer on your team, and the Elite Four actually being the only viable option for grinding in Red, Blue, Yellow, Ruby, and Sapphire, and one of the few choices outside of Red and the Trainer House in Gold, Silver, and Crystal. It wasn't until Fire Red and Leaf Green that the games gave the Elite Four new and more powerful teams for rematches to make leveling up your Pokemon an easier task. Also, Battle Chateau. You have more trainers to battle, the levels of their teams vary widely to allow for the use of different level mods in battle for the purposes of leveling up your team, and you can make more money in a shorter amount of time.
No one in the Chaos Elite Four is particularly a joy to battle, but Siegebold takes the cake for most irritating of them all. Every time you battle him, he asks you if you consider Pokemon battling to be an art, because he simply can't say. If you say yes, he agrees and talks about how artful life is. If you say no, though, he throws a fit and insults you. What a pretentious jerk. Why even begin with the premise that both answers are equally valid if you can't handle it when some kid doesn't validate your precious opinion?
Is this really all you have to complain about regarding Siegebold? And yes, his name is pronounced Siebold, not however the fuck you've been pronouncing it. Also, if all the different fan-made challenges such as Monotype runs, Nuzlocke runs, and Avatar challenges have proven anything to me, it's that Pokemon battling can indeed be seen as an art form. Also, let's not forget the obvious answer of, Pokemon is a series of video games, and video games can be considered a form of art.
It doesn't even matter what I actually think about Pokemon battling being an art or not. Just the way he reacts if you don't stroke his ego is enough to make me say no to him every time just to make him mad.
If you think Siebel's a jerk because he goes off on you if you say Pokemon battling isn't an art form, and you repeatedly answer no to his question just to piss him off, then what does that make you?
So those are our opinions on the top 10 worst Elite Four members. Which ones do you guys think were the worst? Let us know in the comments section below.
At least you're allowing comments, unlike Tamashii, so points there, I guess.
Make sure to go check out her channel as well. The link to her channel will be in the description below. Thank you all for watching. This has been Brandon, and I'll see you in the next video.
Hello everyone, this is Tricky, and if you've been following my content for about a year or two, you may have seen this video on another channel before. It's kind of getting close to Halloween, and I just wanted to share this video again, and I'm sure that you guys have noticed my obsession with creepy, ghostly things, so I thought it would fit my channel very, very well. I made this about a year ago, and it was uploaded to another channel, like I said. I worked really, really hard on this, and I just really wanted to make sure that no one would miss it. Plus, some of you who are new to my content, I didn't want you to miss anything either.
Yes, this is a re-upload on her channel of an older video of hers, but the way I see it, she apparently still stands by that list of hers and didn't bother tweaking it, which is why I found it okay to make this commentary on the list. So now that you saw that explanation of hers, I'm skipping the rest of the preface and moving on to the list proper.
At number 20, we have Credilli. To be completely honest, this Pokemon doesn't look like it would be dangerous, but its Pokedex entry definitely goes against that. It ensnares prey with its 8 tentacles. It then melts the prey with a strong acid before feeding. Oh, that's lovely. So it wraps little thingies around you, and then it melts you alive. That's not cool.
I take it you're not all that familiar with Venus flytraps or other real-life carnivorous plants then. I'm just saying, it's really hard to find Cradley's Pokedex entry creepy when there are so many real-life carnivorous plants that feed on various animals in the same way. Also,
I'm just a mean green mother from outer space, and I'm bad. Outer space? Mother from outer space, and it looks like you've been had. I'm just a mean green mother from outer space, so get off my back, get out my face, cause I'm mean and green.
I probably just made it impossible for some folks watching to take it seriously now. You're welcome.
But of course, this Pokemon really isn't that big of a threat in the Pokemon world, considering that this is a fossil Pokemon, so I suppose that's a good thing they went extinct.
Kinda hard to call it truly extinct in the Pokemon world when there are apparently enough root fossils around for resurrection machines to keep bringing the evolutionary line back, for trainers to use the Pokemon and or fill up Pokedex pages, and to warn Pokemon professors to give the line their own Pokedex entries.
Moving on to number 19, we have Cubone. I'm pretty sure if anybody has looked up previous Pokedex entries, Cubone has been on there somewhere. And I'm pretty sure that everybody is familiar with its Pokedex entry. It wears the skull of its dead mother on its head. When it becomes lonesome, it is said to cry loudly. That's really, really depressing. Don't get me wrong, that is extremely creepy, but I find it more sad than scary.
Then why is it on this list? You just said it's more depressing than scary. The title of this video is Top 20 Creepiest Pokedex Entries. Given that this is a top 20 list, and the Pokedex has over 700 entries, I'm pretty damn sure you could have come up with something to replace Cubone. You even name drop a couple of other mons later on and even say they're creepy, yet for some reason they aren't on the list while Cubone is. Hint, hint.
And what freaks me out the most is that there's a lot of Cubones, and they're all wearing their dead mother on its head. Why are there so many? Do they kill their mother? I know that Team Rocket killed them in the game. I feel so bad for Cubone. Okay, now I'm sad. Let's move on.
That was just the one Cubone and the one Marowak in Lavender Town though. Also, and this may be somewhat tangential, there's a theory regarding the Pokedex that I'm surprised none of these PokeTubers seem to bring up in these Pokedex list videos. I'm gonna play the clip from the tryout that I participated in with MasterTP10 and Zerarick on Chaos Key's top 5 dark and creepy things in Pokemon. You know, that encyclopedia of Pokemon entries that many fans have reason to believe are written in-game by kids? Given how some Pokemon's entries may not be consistent from game to game, and many of them contain information and have absolutely nothing to back them up in game, and how these entries don't show up until after the Pokemon trainers capture or acquire said Pokemon, is this theory really that far-fetched?
Moving on to number 18, we have Victory Bell. In the Pokemon show, this Pokemon is extremely hilarious. In my opinion, this Pokemon has always freaked me out, but its dex entry does not sound pleasant at all. This horrifying plant Pokemon attracts prey with aromatic honey, then melts them in its mouth. I honestly cannot imagine being melted alive. That is the most unfortunate death ever.
Yeah, imagine all those kids playing Super Metroid who beat Crocomire and saw the skin melting off his bones. Think of the children!
Can you imagine being stuck head first in its mouth and just being melted? No, that's no.
First Cradley and now this. The whole Victory Bell evolutionary line is based on the pitcher plant. You know the pitcher plant's claim to fame? It's carnivorous. One more thing.
I'm just a mean green mother from outer space, and I'm bad. Green bad. Outer space. Mother from outer space, and it looks like you've been had. I'm just a mean green mother from outer space, so get off my back, get off my face, 'cause I'm mean and green.
Moving on to number 17, we have Gothitelle. I didn't expect this Pokemon to have a creepy Pokedex entry, but its Pokedex entry is both depressing and extremely creepy. They can see trainers' lifespans. When it learns its trainer's lifespan, it cries in sadness. This is like some Death Note Shinigami crap going on right here.
So Gothitelle has the Shinigami eyes then? It had to give up half its own lifespan to do that, so chances are it's gonna die before its trainer,
To a lot of people, death is absolutely terrifying. And could you even imagine being around somebody that you love and seeing their lifespan? When you first think about it, it doesn't really sound that bad, but if you actually put yourself in those shoes and to imagine when somebody is actually going to die, you would constantly just be waiting for it. That is torturous, in my opinion.
She brings up a good point about how if you saw someone's lifespan, you'd just be waiting for them to die, but she's missing a few things. 1. Many trainers probably have long and healthy lifespans, meaning that, my stupid joke about the Shinigami eyes aside, the Gothitelle will probably die before the trainer does. 2. She doesn't even bring up the possibility of the trainer's expected death being untimely, premature, and possibly happening when the trainer is very young. That actually makes it debatably creepier than she lets on. With something like that in mind, you could argue that Gothitelle's dex entry should be higher on the list.
Moving on to number 16, we have Spiritomb. I know this is random, but I honestly wish that its shiny form was its regular form because its shiny form is beautiful.
6 seconds of padding in the form of a tangent not even remotely related to its dex entry. In a video in which the entries are just 31.5 seconds long on average, and several of the entries are even shorter than that. GG.
But anyway, this Pokemon has a very interesting Pokedex entry. It was formed by combining 108 spirits. It was bound to a fissure in an old keystone as punishment for misdeeds 500 years ago. I actually want to know what this thing did, but it's honestly crazy to think about that this Pokemon is actually 108 evil spirits combined. But the creepiest thing to me is that somebody actually fused them together. Someone had to have done that. And that sounds like some freaky ritual stuff. So, what the freaking crap, dude?
The creepy factor is dulled if you know why 108 is a significant number in Japan and other Far East countries. E.g., 108 is the number of temptations a person must face before reaching nirvana in Buddhism, and is also the number of beads on a Buddhist rosary, and a bell is rung 108 times to signify the new year in Japan, just to name a few examples. This is yet another example of why research can only serve to help these types of lists. Also, refer back to my statement about the theory regarding what exactly Pokédex entries are. There is absolutely nothing to back up Spiritomb's entry in-game, nor to back up the odd keystone being what it is, other than it being connected to Spiritomb, and it being the item that summons Spiritomb to battle you in certain games so you can capture it. Even so, there's nothing in-game that states that the odd keystone that the player character gets is 500 years old, or that the Spiritomb you battle is also 500 years old, so the Pokédex entry could just be referencing a Pokemon World fairy tale for all we know.
Taking our number 15 spot is Parasect. This Pokemon looks so happy, but it's really not. The bug host is drained of energy by the mushrooms on its back. They appear to do all the thinking. If any of you guys are familiar with me, you guys know how I feel about Parasect. I've spoken about Parasect before. This Pokemon is basically a zombie. I like to compare it with the game The Last of Us because their zombie outbreak was due to an evil fungus thing. Parasect is the Pokemon equivalent to that.
So you're basically saying that Parasect is a zombie bug. It's hard to see it as creepy when 1, the zombie bug does not want to eat your brains unlike zombies seen in other franchises, and 2, the zombie bug can be taken out in one hit by an ember or a peck.
Moving on to number 14, we have Hypno. I'm sure most of you were expecting Hypno to be on here somewhere. This Pokemon is basically the Predator Pokemon, due to its creepypasta stories.
Creepypasta stories that much of the Pokemon fandom regard as fucking jokes nowadays.
In its Pokedex entry, this Pokemon is feared by a lot of people. It carries a pendulum-like device. There is once an incident in which it took away a child it hypnotized. Why would you do that? Why? Moving on to...
Wait, that's it? You devoted only 25 seconds to this entry, and the only thing you brought up to back up its Dex entry were the fucking creepypastas written about it, i.e. nothing in-game. Given how little time you devoted to it, you could have easily replaced it with something else and devoted more time to that replacement. Hint, hint.
Number 13, we have Gorbis. I've never really been a fan of this Pokemon, and I really don't even like its Pokedex entry because I felt the need to insert the word prey 3 times in this one. Wow.
Jeez, it's like the Pokemon series is inspired by real-life nature and trying to show that wild Pokemon can have predator-prey relationships.
It stabs people with its mouth, and then it drains the body fluids of its prey. That is messed up. Of course, Gorbis is based off of a mermaid. It will fool people with its beauty, even though I don't think it's pretty at all. And then it will kill them. How charming.
Its method of tricking and feeding on prey by draining its bodily fluids can be seen as creepy, but at least it doesn't do what the Candiru supposedly does and swim up its prey's genitals and feed on them from the inside out. Be thankful for Pokemon's E rating, everybody.
Taking our number 12 spot is Cofagrigus. Everything about this Pokemon is creepy. It has been said that they swallow those who get too close and turn them into mummies.
It has been said. It has been said. As in, there is nothing to back this up in universe as fact. Actually, I'm gonna wait to get back to this.
Do you know the process of becoming a mummy? Mummification requires them to take out all your internal organs, pull out your brains, and all kinds of really, really bad things. And to think that this Pokemon would do this to you while you're alive.
1. Its ability of Mummy, which Yamask also has by the way, is nothing like that and simply functions like Pass It On, or more graphically, like a virus that spreads through physical contact with others. 2. You are aware that actual mummification requires the body to already be a corpse. As in, actually be dead, right?
To be juiced by this Pokemon does not sound nice in the slightest. Plus, if you're claustrophobic, that would be terrible to be stuck in there.
How can it directly mummify a body that's still living? Unless you think it actually kills the target prior to real mummification, in which case that raises the question of why, with that sort of alleged implication in Cofagrigus' Dex entry, the entry falls at only number 12 on your list. I'd like to refer back to what I said about how there's nothing to back up its Dex entry in universe as fact. Not only is that completely unscientific, making it an antithesis to what the Pokedex is supposed to stand for, but it makes me completely unable to take the Dex entry seriously. Also, it's hard to say its Dex entry is creepy when its entry could be a complete lie and we could be making an entire species of harmless spirits look bad.
Moving on to number 11, we have Honedge. If anyone dares to grab its hilt, it wraps a blue cloth around that person's arm and drains that person's life energy completely. This thing doesn't even give you a chance. If you grab it, it's gonna kill you. That is really unfortunate. Moving on to...
Whoa. A 16-second entry on the list. Done just like that. Refer back to what I said about how short Hypno's entry was and how that could have been replaced with something else, since that's even more apt here. Anyway, I'll give credit and say that the idea of anyone grabbing Honedge by its hilt being completely drained of their life energy is creepy. But 1, if you're that paranoid, that's why you simply don't grab it by the hilt, you idiot, just pat it on the sheath. 2, if Honedge really does have that power, I'm sure Honedge can control it and choose its victims, so I don't think it's indiscriminate.
Number 10, we have Shedinja. You really wouldn't expect something that had a halo to be completely dangerous.
She doesn't know much about angels and other stories in Mist, does she?
Shedinja is a discarded bug shell that came back to life. If you peer into the crack on its back, it will steal your soul. I don't know if it destroys your soul, or it eats it, or your soul gets trapped in its shell for all eternity. Obviously, all 3 are bad, but as long as you don't look in there, I'm sure you'll be fine. But I'm too curious, so I'll probably die.
First of all, refer back to the hearsay and lack of evidence I brought up with Cofagrigus' entry. Second of all, if Shedinja's entry was true, then every single trainer who used the Shedinja in-universe would have been screwed. But they all managed to make it through their journeys just fine, so I think it's safe to say that its entry is a lie.
At number 9, we have Bannet. They are said to live in garbage dumps and wander around in search of the children that threw them away.
According to Dex entries from different games that you didn't bring up. And do you really think that many kids threw that many dolls away and that many dolls became a single species of ghost-type Pokemon in universe? I know, there's also Shuppet, and Shuppet could have evolved into Bannet, but then that would raise a whole nother question of which came first, the Shuppet or the Bannet.
Strong feelings of hatred turned this puppet into a Pokemon. If it opens its mouth, its cursed energy escapes. Well, that's unfortunate because it's always opening its mouth.
Shouldn't that be a hint that at least some of the information in its dex entry is not true then?
Hatred is a very powerful thing, and to have something vengeful chasing after you is not good. And this Pokemon has a Mega Evolution, so not only is it angry, it's very powerful.
You make it sound like Banette is angry all the time. The fact that it's able to Mega Evolve at all means that it's also not true, because the fact that it's able to Mega Evolve means that it's not angry at its trainer.
Taking our number 8 spot is Gourgeist. It enwraps its prey in its hair-like arms. It sings joyfully as it observes the suffering of its prey.
It's hard to say that it's creepy when an entry doesn't even describe what exactly the Gourgeist is doing to its alleged prey. Is it draining its life force like what Honedge allegedly does? Is it sucking out the prey's bodily fluids? Is it trying to kill it with cuddles? Is its singing voice that bad? Seriously, what the fuck is it doing?
What is wrong with this thing? Why would it do that? That is pretty dark in my opinion.
Dark does not equal creepy.
And then if you hear it singing, you get cursed.
So its singing voice really is that bad. Holy shit. I looked up its dex entries on Bulbapedia to see its other entries. X and OR bring up how anyone who hears it singing is cursed. Y and AS bring up the original dex entry Tricky brought up here. But there's another thing I mentioned about Gourgeist while I was looking through info about it. Its Y and AS entries say it likes to sing, yet Gourgeist can't learn sing. I wonder why.
Talk to me, tell me your name. You blow me off like it's all the same. You lit it fuse and I'm taking away like a bomb. Yeah, baby. Talk to me, tell me your sign. You switching sides like a Gemini. You playing games and now you're hitting my heart like a drum. Yeah, baby. She bangs, she bangs. Oh, baby, when she moves, she moves. I go crazy cause she looks like a flower, but she stings like a bee. Like every girl in history. She bangs, she bangs. I'm wasted by the way
Thank
she...
you.
And I'll let the audience members draw their own conclusions on this one.
So either way, you're screwed. At number 7, we have Glalie. After immobilizing its foe in ice, this Pokemon enjoys eating it in a leisurely fashion. If it completely froze its prey, like if they were dead and then it did it, but it just immobilizes its foe. So it's still alive and it just eats it. Slowly. That is so mean.
I can't help but notice that you first said prey, and then you went back to being consistent with its entry and later said foe. As creepy as its manner of taking down its foe is, that doesn't change the fact that it's doing it to its foe. Not prey, foe. Apparently Glalie only does this to those it feels deserve such punishment. If this indeed is the case, whoever or whatever did this must have done something really bad. Not sure if that makes it more creepy, or fucking metal as fuck, dude.
At least its Mega Form has a broken jaw, so I guess that makes it a little better.
Implying a Glalie would have a trainer that would let it Mega Evolve so it could do that. If a trainer had a foe that a Glalie would eat, that would make it creepier, so you probably just made it worse.
Moving on, we have Phantump. At first glance, this ghost Pokemon is extremely adorable, but it's Pokedex entry. It always has to mess that up. According to old tales, these Pokemon are stumps possessed by the spirits of children who died while lost in the forest. These cute little Pokemon are human children who died.
According to old tales that for all we know could have been tales concocted by the Pokemon universe's equivalent of the brothers Grimm or Charles Perrault.
Why? Nintendo, what are you doing? And it makes me wonder how humans are able to transform into Pokemon after they die.
A similar question how dolls are supposedly able to transform into Pokemon. Arguably even more illogical compared to humans supposedly being able to transform into Pokemon, because with the dolls, those are inanimate objects transforming into animate beings.
Moving on to number 5, we have Kabutops. Anything that is capable of chopping you up is not good.
By that logic, I guess the rest of the Honedge line should be on this list as well, because hey, they're swords, right? Or how about Absol, or Gallade, or anything that's capable of using sword stance, like Scyther. Oh wait, Scyther's not on this list, yet it could have made for a good replacement for Cubone.
It slices its prey with its sharp sickles and drinks the body fluids. This Pokemon is pretty hostile as well, so it wouldn't think twice about doing it either.
At least it's finishing off its prey quickly before it gets to feeding on it. Refer back to what I said about the Gorbis entry and how these Dex entries are actually toning things down from real life.
Again, this is another fossil Pokemon, so it's probably a good thing that they're extinct.
Yet there are apparently enough dome fossils to bring the Kabuto evolutionary line back, give the line their own Pokedex entries, and allow trainers to raise them and use them in battle, so they aren't extinct, are they?
At number 4, we have Dusknoir. According to several Pokedex entries, it has the ability to send people to the underworld, or the spirit world, or any kind of world that you like to associate death with.
Pokemon equivalent of the Grim Reaper who waits for people to die. Number 4 on our list. Everyone's afraid of death, yes, but what ruins the placement for me is this. Remember Kafagrigus placing number 12 on our list? Apparently in her mind, the Mon that supposedly kills people is less creepy than the Grim Reaper Mon that carries already dead souls to the underworld. I can't compute with your logic, Tricky.
If a Dusknoir does not like you, you're out of luck.
Where did you get this from? The Grim Reaper can kill, but only in certain cultures, typically Western ones. In Eastern cultures, Japan included, the Grim Reaper is a guide that has to wait for the person to die before they can take their soul to the underworld. Given that Game Freak is a Japanese game developer, and they waited until Gen 5 to base their settings on Western settings, it's safe to say that the pre-Gen 5 mods were based more on Eastern archetypes. Try again.
Pretty much the entire evolution line of Dusknoir is pretty messed up. Duskull likes to make children cry, and it would do everything it can in order to hear children crying. That's not nice. And Dusclops is basically emptiness, so if you get too close, it could suck you in forever, and that's not cool either. But the power that Dusknoir has over human life is ridiculous. If Dusknoir and Darkrai joined forces, that would be the end of the world.
You mentioned how Dusknoir and Darkrai can supposedly team up to bring about the end of the world. Yet Darkrai is nowhere on your list. Darkrai could have made for another good replacement for Cubone. What the fuck are you doing?
Moving on to number 3, we have Chandelure.
Boy, doesn't this sound familiar?
At number 2 is Yamask, or Yamask, or I don't freaking know. At first glance, this Pokemon looks really cute, but nope. Each of these Pokemon carries a mask that used to be its face when it was human. Sometimes they look at it and cry. Obviously, the one in the picture is a default looking face, but can you imagine being a Yamask and just looking at your face forever? That is terrifying.
Apparently in Tricky Wee's mind, sad and tragic equals creepy and terrifying, and it makes Yamask take the number 2 spot on her list. That also explains a lot about Cubo making it onto her list at all, and why Scyther and Darkrai didn't find places on her list. Tricky, you really need to start using dictionary.com.
I still want to know why humans become Pokemon in the first place, and of course I could kind of go back with Chandelure's Pokedex entry. Maybe the people that Chandelure forces to wander the world become certain ghost Pokemon.
If that indeed is the case, that actually would make Chandelure's entry a lot more creepy. And not only that, but it would also give evidence to its Pokedex entries, which is something a lot more Dex entries need.
So taking our number 1 spot is Yveltal. When this Pokemon's life comes to an end, it absorbs the life energy of every living thing and turns into a cocoon once more. Obviously in Pokemon X and Y, they couldn't actually have a thing kill off everything. Of course, there was some death in it, but this Pokemon is literally the Pokemon of death. This Pokemon has the ability of killing everything. And that goes for plants too! Plants are a living thing. It has no mercy.
What dampers Yveltal's creepy factor is that its design is a reference to Ragnarok. Specifically the race Velgar alongside Xerneas's Yggdrasil and Zygarde's Nidalgar. Ragnarok itself is the cataclysmic event in Norse mythology where all life, gods included, is killed off, allowing the world to be reborn and for all life to begin anew. So not only would it be a cycle that would begin again, but I reiterate that it's from Norse mythology. A myth. Myth. Myth!
It's a good thing that Yveltal sleeps for 1,000 years at a time, otherwise everybody would be dead. But at least we have Xerneas to counter that.
You just broke your own argument by saying that! If Xerneas was around when Yveltal died, it could resurrect all life right after Yveltal killed all life with its death. Hard to say Yveltal is super creepy when, if you died after it died, Xerneas could just as easily bring you and everything else back.
And I think that Yveltal is probably the funniest Pokemon to play with in Pokemon and Me because it's basically Doom Satan Bird.
Yet another reason Yveltal isn't all that creepy.
Awkward silence! Yay!
Yay! Video's over! Final thoughts. First off, please learn to understand the differences between creepy, dark, and tragic, because even though they can overlap, there are differences between all three. Second, and more importantly, it could be said that Tricky is taking these dex entries a bit too seriously. I understand that given my rebuttals against different entries on her list, I could be seen as taking the Pokedex in general a bit too seriously when it's just a thing to help players bookmark progress in a video game franchise. Tricky just made a video about it, presumably to encourage discussion about it, when I could be seen as inadvertently shooting that discussion down. On the contrary, I like seeing discussion about it, but there are aspects to the Pokedex that I feel should be fleshed out more, like how the entries should be disputed and debated in-universe. It's a scientific encyclopedia, so it makes sense, right? It'll probably never happen, at least not in the video games, but one can hope. I'll elaborate more on this in a segment of my next solo commentary, so stay tuned for that. Third, and finally, this list, despite having an upload date dating from October of last year, was a re-upload of a video from October 2014. And I don't want to do this, but I feel I have to. To compare this to the co-op list she did with Tamashii that Henry, Silver, and TP made their co-op commentary on a couple months ago, this is the better list in comparison. I know I'm comparing a solo list to a collab list, and the bulk of our top X lists involve Fakemon and Pokemon fusions, and those are completely different subjects to the point that those don't even count for comparison here. But when a top X list from 2014 is better than a top X list that was made 5 months ago, you really need to step back and look at what you're doing wrong.
Have you ever looked at a Pokemon and thought, why you no grass type?
I explained this in my Truegreen commentary, and even though there's more I can say about it, I really don't want to get into it, because... Is Florges on your list? Are you bringing it up as an honorable mention? No? Then what was the point of bringing Florges up specifically besides this stupid joke?
Throughout the Pokemon franchise, there have been Pokemon that should have gotten a certain typing.
You could have easily started the video off with this. The stupid joke preceding this really wasn't funny and thus came off as nothing more than 6 seconds worth of padding.
On the other hand, there are also Pokemon that shouldn't have gotten a certain typing. Don't get me wrong, almost all the typings that Game Freak comes up with are pretty much spot on. But some just leave me questioning what they were thinking. So today, I'm going to be going over the top 5 Pokemon that I think are mistyped.
The fact that he showed 4 examples in passing, one as part of a joke, makes me think that he wanted to make a top 10 list but couldn't think of a 10th, so he showed those 4 in passing as pseudo-honorable mentions and narrowed it down to a top 5. There are no rules to the amount of entries for top X lists, seeing as how people have made top 11 lists and even top 9 lists of various sorts in the past. So what was wrong with making a top 9 list and putting those 4 you showed in passing on your list?
Keep in mind, this list is entirely my own opinion, so if you guys
but the
disagree with
information
my
backing
list,
it
be sure
up
to
can
let me know
still be
what
called into
Pokemon you
question.
think are mistyped
Hence
in the
this
comment section
commentary.
below. One of the most requested Pokemon to gain a new typing has to be Luxray. Luxray literally screams for it to be an electric dark type.
Congratulations, Arizo, you're another anti-linguist who has no clue what the word literally means.
Let's start with its design. I don't want to be that guy that says, oh, he's got darker colors, so he has to be a dark type, right?
Racist.
But I would like to point out the black fur it has. Now, of course, this isn't the only reason why I think it should be a dark type. There's other factors that help make my case. For example, there's its move pool, its intimidating and scary appearance, and come on, Luxray could really use that stab crunch. But hey, a man can dream.
Never mind that other intimidating Pokemon that learn Bite and Crunch via level up are not dark type, yet I don't see you saying they should be. Hi Totodile line, how are you 3 doing? The only requirements for some evolutionary lines to learn Bite and or Crunch is for them to have a strong enough jaw. And Luxray's black fur? It's a black cat whose design is based on lynxes, lions, and possibly panthers. Its dark fur doesn't mean anything.
Okay, I'm gonna say this right now. I honestly had no idea that Drapion wasn't part bug until after I made that Drapion theory. God, that was a bad video.
You mean you didn't know Drapion wasn't part bug from battling Aaron, using Flamethrower on his Drapion and not getting a super effective hit from it? That's how I found out in my first playthrough of Platinum.
And I just never really understood why they took out the bug typing. It still looks like a bug, and this Pokemon is literally all over the place. First it's a poison bug type, then it's a poison dark type, and then it's part of the water egg group. It's just all over the place.
Yeah, part of the water 3 egg group specifically. Even though the majority of the Pokemon in this egg group are aquatic invertebrates, several in this egg group are fossil Pokemon. This is the important part. In fact, let's look at the fossil Pokemon that are part of this egg group. The Ammonite line, the Kabuto line, the Tortuga line, and what's this? The Lilip line, the Anorith line, and the Arcan line? Well, isn't that bizarre? But let's go back to looking at Drapion specifically. Its other egg group besides Water 3 is Bug, which lines up with the fact that its pre-evolution is part Bug. However, both Skorupi and Drapion can be caught at the Great Marsh in the Sinnoh games. It's a wetland area, and the line cannot be caught anywhere else in Sinnoh. Also, the fact that one of their egg groups is Water 3 is a pointer to a possible design inspiration being Eurypterids, otherwise known as sea scorpions, an extinct genus of arthropods related to arachnids and possible ancestors of modern scorpions. And the Skorupi line is based on scorpions already. It's in their name, for crying out loud!
I mean, I understand it's a scorpion, and I guess scorpions aren't insects, but all scorpions still classify as bugs.
I can't read that screenshot at all. I'd love to know what that source you used is, because according to Wikipedia, scorpions are arachnids, which are a completely different taxonomic class from insects. Yeah, people may still call scorpions bugs informally, but as far as the scientific community is concerned, arachnids and insects are two different things. If scorpions really were bugs, then spiders would also be considered bugs, but that's not the case either. So shush.
And before you type in the comment section saying, "Oh, you stupid idiot, insects are the same thing as bugs." Bugs are not just exclusive to insects. Arachnids, which is what scorpions are, also classifies as bugs as well.
Informally and colloquially, we only refer to them all as bugs in an informal context. If all non-aquatic arthropods were truly regarded as bugs in the scientific community, then why is there a taxonomic order consisting of 50,000 to 80,000 species of insects collectively known as true bugs?
And I think the fact that Drapion's typing left Pokemon fans wondering why the change further proves my point.
Enough out-of-game stuff. Let's look at Skorupi's moveset. In its debut generation, it could learn 3 Dark-type moves versus 2 Bug-type moves via level up. In the TM department, it only added on 1 Bug-type move while adding on 6 Dark-type moves. It could learn 3 more Dark-type moves via breeding versus 2 more Bug-type moves via tutoring. A part Bug-type Pokemon that only had access to 5 Bug-type moves while it had access to 12 Dark-type moves in its move pool. Did that not tip you off that maybe, just maybe, Skorupi wouldn't stay a bug type upon evolving? And there's also the fridge logic I brought up earlier that scorpions aren't actually bugs. Also, you could use this to argue that if there's any mon that's mistyped here, it's Skorupi. You could easily turn this around on it and argue that Skorupi never should have been part bug type in the first place and that the line should have been part dark type from the very start.
This Pokemon's typing has to be the most aggravating out of any Pokemon ever.
Yet it's only number 3 on your list. Nice diction there, buddy.
Gyarados is a Pokemon that should have been a Dragon type. It's based on a sea serpent and a Chinese dragon. Emphasis on Chinese dragon. Look, I understand the reason why they didn't do it the first time with Gyarados in Gen 1. Back in Gen 1, having Gyarados being a water dragon type would have been really OP. Considering how easy it is to catch a Magikarp, if it had the dragon typing once you evolved it, it would have gained resistances to a lot of types.
Note how he also points out in text, no weaknesses. We'll be getting back to this.
You would be able to easily beat the game with Gyarados. Granted, there was no dragon type move aside from Dragon Rage in Gen 1, but that's beside the point.
Is it? Is it really, since you're bothering to bring it up? That just further illustrates the Dragon type's problems in Gen 1. The only reason people don't talk about it is because there was only one Dragon type evolutionary line back then, and it was hard to come by in those games. But because of Dragon Rage being the only Dragon type move back then, Dragon types in practice only had a weakness to Ice. Yeah, plenty of Pokemon could learn Ice Beam and Blizzard, but that doesn't change the fact that they only had one weakness versus 4 resistances in practice. Now, Dragonite, being part flying, was also weak to rock, but there were only 2 rock-type moves in Gen 1, and how many people actually used Rock Throw or Rock Slide against a Dragonite?
But why? Why in the absolute hell is Mega Gyarados not a Dragon type?
Yeah, you get the point by now. There's more I want to say, but I want to save it for later.
The first logical step for a Mega Gyarados should have been making it a part Dragon type.
Oh, really? Let's look at how many Dragon type moves it can learn. Via level up, we've got Dragon Rage, a set damage move, Twister, which isn't very good, and Dragon Dance, an attack booster. Via TM, we've got Dragon Tail, and they added Dragon Pulse and Outrage via Tutoring and ORAS, but those don't count since Mega Gyarados was added in X and Y. So that makes only 4 Dragon-type moves overall as of X and Y. Not a very good selection to support making Mega Gyarados part Dragon.
But no! They made it Dark type, are you kidding me? There is no excuse for this, Game Freak, no excuse.
Taunt, Torment, Payback, and Dark Pulse via TM. And even though it's only Dark-type moves via level up or Bite and Crunch, which plenty of non-Dark-type Pokemon can learn, there's more to support it being part Dark rather than part Dragon. And it's later! Seeing this bastard use Mega Gyarados added a lot to the atmosphere, and Mega Gyarados looked as evil as he did. If that's not enough to support a part Dark typing, then I don't know what is!
Golduck's Pokemon typing is probably the most confusing out of any Pokemon.
The number 2 entry is the most confusing? Man, I'd love to see how you set up the number 1 entry.
I mean, this Pokemon and its pre-evolution have a ton of reasons to be a Water Psychic type. But it's only a Water type. Let's start with Golduck's pre-evolution. Psyduck. It literally has the word Psychic in its name. It's also seen in the anime using a lot of Psychic type moves, and very proficiently on top of that.
First of all, the anime and the video games take place in 2 different continuities. Second of all, even if the anime Psyduck can use its psychic abilities well, it never remembers using them.
Speaking of moves, Golduck's move pool is filled with Psychic type moves.
Yeah, a total of 14 moves spread across the level up, TM, breeding, and tutoring as of Gen 6. That's not much. To put it in perspective, that ties with Starmie, a part Psychic Mon whose selection of Psychic-type moves are considered to be somewhat limited compared to other Psychic-type Mons, such as Alakazam, who has 13 Psychic-type moves in its level-up move pool alone, with another 5 via TM, 6 via breeding, and 6 via tutoring to make 30 total, not counting duplicates.
Just to name a few, there's Psychic, Calm Mind, Psyshock, Confusion, Zen Headbutt, and so much more. Even its Pokedex entries make a case for it being a Psychic type. In Pokemon Silver's Dex entry, it states it appears by waterways at dusk. It may use its telekinetic powers if its forehead glows mysteriously. And this one from Pokemon Emerald states, it uses psychic powers when its forehead shimmers with light. I mean, come on. This is irrefutable evidence.
Then how come we don't see its forehead glow in the games when we see it use a Psychic-type move? Now, I know the footage I used here doesn't actually show it from the front, but guess what? There's next to no footage on YouTube of Golduck battling, so this was the best I could find. If I tried recording footage myself, the quality would have been even crappier than this, and I don't think you would have wanted to watch that, so I didn't even bother recording anything. Now, about the battle animation, it's very limited. There's also footage of it using Hydro Pump from the front, and guess what? No glowing. The point is, the game developers could only do so much with battle animations, and either they would have had it glowing for every animation like that, or wouldn't have been glowing at all. Anyone with the latter. Either way, its Psychic-type attack animation would have contradicted the Pokedex entry, because even if they went with the former, it wouldn't have been glowing exclusively when it used its Psychic powers when the Dex entries imply that's the case.
One of my favorite Pokemon to come out of Generation 2, and my favorite legendary of all time, has to be Lugia.
Number 3, most aggravating. Number 2, most confusing. Number 1, favorite legendary? Irizo, you had no criteria for your list at all, did you?
But one thing I never understood was that it's a Psychic type. And it's a primary type on top of that. Why isn't this Pokemon a water flying type? It's literally called the Guardian of the Sea.
Just because you watch over a thing or are associated with a thing doesn't make you that thing. Look at the Lake Trio. They watch over different lakes, yet I don't see you complaining about how they aren't part water.
Lugia is based on the Ryujin, which is a dragon who lived on the ocean floor and was the Shinto god of the sea. All these facts really help make a good case for Lugia to be a water type. But I guess it's okay, cause quad weakness to electric type moves would not be a great time.
there's something else you seem to be missing here. You see Lugia as more directly associated with the water. I, however, see Lugia as being associated with the moon. Yes, even before Lunala came along, we had a Pokemon associated with the moon. The moon controls the tides, which would serve to explain Lugia's status as guardian of the seas. There's also the fact that one possible origin of the name Lugia is Luna, the Latin term for the moon. You know what two English words had their origins from Luna? Lunacy and lunatic. Two words that have been used in history to refer to people with various types of mental illnesses. The terms came from the old belief that said mental illnesses had a connection to the moon. The psychic type is all about the mind, so when you think about how the moon was believed to have made people crazy and is scientifically proven to have an effect on the ocean's tides, all of a sudden Lugia's part psychic typing, despite it being the guardian of the seas, makes a lot more sense. There's also its place in one of the side games to take into consideration. Yes, it's a side game, but bear with me. Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness, the sequel to Pokemon Colosseum. Gale of Darkness has more shadow Pokemon. Pokemon that have had the doors to their hearts artificially closed by the villainous organization in those games to turn them into fighting machines. In other words, those Pokemon were driven insane. In Gale of Darkness, the biggest threat among the Shadow Pokemon is Shadow Lugia. Given the codename XD001 for its status of being the first Shadow Pokemon that cannot be purified by any means. The stronger Shadow status is signified by its color scheme, which is almost an inversion of Lugia's normal color scheme. Dare I say it's like the dark side of the moon?
Hey guys, Truegreen7 here, and right this very second, I'm going to talk about Pokemon that have odd typing. Some Pokemon have a type that seems like it doesn't belong, or don't have a type that seems like they should have. I'm going to list the Pokemon that I personally believe are mistyped. I'm not saying any of these were mistakes. In fact, for some of these entries, I'm going to justify their current typing.
If you're going to justify their current typing, then you're going out of your way to say they aren't mistyped, thus destroying whatever reason you may have had to put those mons on your list in the first place. Meaning those mons would have no reason to be on your list. Is this a top 10 mistyped Pokemon list, or a top 10 Pokemon whose types are good but could have been better list? One of the very definitions of mistype is to assign to an incorrect category. If their category was correct to begin with, then the mons were not mistyped. Seriously, dude, you just turned your video's title into a huge misnomer, and we haven't even gotten to the list yet!
Number 10. Charizard. Oh, you guys thought Charizard would be number 1, but no, I fooled ya. You see, I totally understand that Charizard should be a Dragon type. So much so that it makes sense for Mega Charizard X to be a Dragon type. But this opinion is solely based on design. Though, to be fair, almost all of the entries are based on design.
And there's a big problem with this list. He said almost all the entries are based on design, so he's flat out dismissing game mechanics and type balance. This is gonna kill whatever arguments he'll be presenting for the vast majority of his list, if not his entire list.
But in terms of gameplay, it would make absolutely no sense for Charizard to be a Dragon type. The first reason is that it just wouldn't be fair, because it would make Charmander the only logical choice to pick as a starter, because it will be resistant to grass and water.
Implying that Charmander would have been Fire Dragon from the very start? It doesn't get wings until Charmeleon evolves into Charizard, hence why the line doesn't become Fire Flying until Charmeleon evolves into Charizard in the first place. Wait, dude? Dude, put the gun down. Put that gun down! I see you getting ready to—
Another big reason is that it would be so stupid to allow Dragon types to be available so early on into the game. There's only one Dragon family in Kanto, and they're obtainable later in the game, and Dratini is super rare to begin with. So making Charizard a Dragon type would just ruin the rarity of the Dragon type in Generation 1, because all you'll have to do is press A to obtain him. But he is on the list because, of course, I would like Charizard to be a Fire Dragon type, but I am also content with him just being a dragon in Mega form.
Dude! You just shot yourself in the foot so bad that you need to call 911. Of course the game developers wouldn't give you a Fire Dragon starter. First off, you only brought up the Dragon type's rarity in the Gen 1 games. Given your hypothetical type of a mon later on in your list, the Dragon type could have been even worse than that given how good it is defensively. More details on that will be given when that mon comes up in the video, so we'll get back to that later. Anyway, the only reason people don't complain about how bad the Dragon type was back then was because there was only one Dragon type evolutionary line in those days, the Dratini line. Dratini's fully evolved form of Dragonite is part flying. One Ice Beam would take Dragonite down in one hit, provided the right Mon fires that Ice Beam. The Dragon type was always weak to itself from the start, but the problem in Gen 1 was that the only Dragon type attacking move was Dragon Rage, which is a set damage move that does 40 damage no matter what. It wasn't effective by type matchups in Gen 1 either, so even if set damage wasn't taken into account, the move was effectively rendered as having no type back then. Yeah, wrap your head around that. Having Dragon Rage as the only Dragon-type move in Gen 1 effectively meant that the Dragon type was only weak to Ice, while it resisted Electric, Fire, Grass, and Water, types which had moves that were commonly used offensively. If Charizard was made Fire Dragon from the very start, its only real weaknesses would have been Ground, Rock, and Ice, because in the days of Gen 1, the Fire type didn't resist Ice-type attacks, while it would have resisted Bug, Fire, Grass, and Electric. And it would have lost its Ice weakness and gained a resistance to Steel in Gen 2, so it only would have become even more of a defensive powerhouse in Gen 2. Granted, Gen 2 introduced other Dragon-type moves, so its Dragon weakness would have actually started meaning something, but that doesn't change the fact that Charizard could have been pretty overpowered had it been Fire Dragon instead of Fire Flying.
Number 9. Azurill. So, Marill and Azumarill are part water types, and Azurill lives by the water and uses water type attacks, so why isn't Azurill a water type? I know nobody cares, especially since it's going to evolve anyways. But
then why did you care enough to put it on your list?
Me for some reason, I don't know, it's just annoying. So Azurill is known as the polka dot Pokemon. It does not seem like Azurill has any polka dot pattern, but the species name makes sense when you notice how in Japanese, polka dots are called Mizutama, which literally means water balls, which is why Azurill looks like a ball of water. So why isn't it a water type? I really shouldn't care about this, but I do. You know why Azurill is crying? Because it doesn't get stab damage from water type attacks.
The reason why Azurill isn't part water can be explained with a little bit of research. Various species of marine animals start off their lives living only on land and only start living in the water as they get older. There are even other species of marine animals, fish in particular, that make other changes to their biology as they get older. You know what changes those are? Changes to their sex. Look at the gender ratio of Azurill. 75% female, 25% male. Now look at the gender ratio of Marill. Even 50-50. Female Azurill have a 1 in 3 chance of changing into a male upon evolving into a Marill. To be fair, the real-life marine animals that make such changes are not mammals, while the Mons in the Marill line are mammalian, but Azurill and its gender mechanic is still a clever way to give a nod to those animals. If it wasn't a simple programming oversight.
Number 8. Mega Absol. I know these tufts of fur don't contain any bones and are not actually wings, so Mega Absol shouldn't gain the flying type, but damn, does this design scream fairy type. When Mega Evolution was revealed and Mega Absol was right in my face, I know I thought that it would become a fairy dark type, but well, it didn't. This majestic beast, this beautiful creature, this alluring animal just oozes fairy type.
You mean like it shits it out and as it comes out of its ears like smoke?
This wing-like fur. Absol is definitely supposed to represent some kind of guardian angel. After all, he's probably a mist-type dark-type Pokemon, since he is mistaken to be a bringer of doom, when in fact he hasn't been proven to be a cause of disasters. Let's at least all agree that Absol is a pretty good-looking Pokemon.
If Absol was supposed to be a bringer of good luck, then maybe I could understand your argument for making Mega Absol a dual-type Dark Fairy. But really, I can only say that you have an overactive imagination. Also, I should tell you what the Japanese call the Dark type. They call it the Evil type. Yeah, Absol itself is not evil, but it still makes your Guardian Angel argument make less sense, since Guardian Angels aren't portrayed as being evil or believed to be evil in any way. Like, seriously, where did any of that come from?
Number 7. Trapinch and Vibrava.
Hold it. Putting 2 Mons in one entry? I thought this was a top 10 list, not a top 11 list disguised as a top 10 list. Even if they are part of the same evolutionary line, you better have a good reason for a tie, otherwise this is just gonna look like a cop-out. Actually no, this is a cop-out either way. There aren't any rules to the number of allowed entries, and people have made top 11 lists before, so if you want to make a top 11 list, just make a top 11 list!
Of course, if Pokemon with 3 types became a thing, then Flygon should be a bug type as well. But for now, there's nothing wrong with Flygon being a dragon and ground type. It makes sense, so he's not on this spot.
Oh, this totally won't bite him in the ass later, nope.
But Vibrava and Trapinch are definitely mistyped. Trapinch is literally a bug and is based on an antlion. I know Nincada is a ground bug type, so having 2 ground bug types early on in the game would be pretty dumb. But Trapinch deserves that bug typing as well. But there is no excuse for Vibrava being a dragon type. A ground bug type with Levitate would make a little more sense than making this a dragon and this not a dragon.
Let's go through this one at a time. Regarding Trapinch, a bug ground type would work better when you look at its origins, but it doesn't mean a pure ground type doesn't work at all. It lives in a desert, and it learns plenty of ground type moves via level up. In fact, when you do a bit more digging, something which you apparently didn't do, you would notice that pure ground typing works better for Trapinch even better than a bug ground dual typing does. Trapinch learns no bug moves via level up, only 1 via TM, 3 via breeding, and 2 via tutoring. So even if a bug ground dual typing works better in flavor, it doesn't work mechanically. Now for Vibrava. Its design concept, along with that of Flygon, may have been based on the adult stage of the antlion, but what is the antlion? It's a family of insects that's similar to the dragonfly. So similar, in fact, that they're often mistaken for dragonflies, despite the two being in different taxonomic orders. Thus, one can easily make the argument that the Trapinch line is based on both antlions and dragonflies. Hell, look at Flygon! How can you hear the name Flygon, look at it, and not think of a dragonfly? Speaking of dragonflies, I like to bring up one genus of dragonfly, scientific name Progomphus. It contains many species that are usually found near freshwater sandy beaches in tropical regions, but some species can also be found in desert areas. Because of this, the genus as a whole are commonly called sand dragons. Thus, it can be theorized that the design team at Game Freak decided to take sand dragon literally and apply the ground dragon typing to both Vibrava and Flygon. When you bother to actually do your goddamn research, applying the ground dragon typing to Vibrava and Flygon makes a surprising amount of sense.
Number 6. Florges. So I imagine that in 2012, Ken Sugimori must have come to Junichi Masuda and was like, "Hey Masuda, I made this new Pokemon based on flower nymphs. It's called Florges, the garden Pokemon from the word flora meaning flower and gorgeous. Its pre-evolved forms also hold a flower that actually becomes part of Florges' body once it fully evolves. So it's a fairy grass type, right?" "No, it's just a fairy type. Is that a problem?" "Not at all! Of course it's a problem! I don't know why Florges isn't a grass type."
Because if you looked at the possible origins of the pure fairy Flababy line as a whole, you would know that the possible theories involve Anthea and Chloris, 2 deities from Greek mythology. Anthea is one of the Graces and the goddess of flowers and flowery wreaths. Chloris was a nymph. She was a minor nature goddess associated with spring, flowers, and new growth. Florges in particular seems to be based on the Anthosi, nymphs who had hair that resembled flowers. Despite the line being associated with flowers and having flowery appendages, it's not like they themselves are flowers and bound to the plant life they look after. In fact, despite the line not benefiting from grass stab, they may benefit more from not being part grass type. Because they're pure fairy, they are only weak to poison and steel. If they were dual type grass fairy, they would also be weak to flying, fire, and ice, lose their bug resistance, and they would take ×4 damage from poison attacks. Yeah, the grass type would give them resistances to ground, water, grass, and electric, but I don't think the trade-off would be worth it.
Number 5. The Porygon family. So Porygon is a Pokemon made entirely of computer programming code. Porygon 2 is a more advanced model, and Porygon Z is a glitched out Porygon 2. So wouldn't it make sense for at least one of these Pokemon to be an electric type? The normal type is fine, I get it. I like Zangoose. He should have been a fighting type, but I get it. Normal's fine.
Your tone makes it sound like you wanted so badly to put Zangoose on your list. You can't fool me, sir. We'll be coming back to this.
But the electric type really could have sparked a little more popularity into this evolutionary line, especially since a lot of its usable attacks are electric type, one of which is Magnet Rise, and that would really help with all them ground types running around.
1. Never mind the possible Thunderbolt or Charge Beam stab, let's just turn Magnet Rise into a crutch. 2. Magnet Rise only affects the Mon using the move, and while it can be passed on via Baton Pass, the Porygon line can't learn Baton Pass, so many players would rather save that move slot for an offensive move or a support move that can actually benefit the rest of the party, and if they thought an Earthquake user was coming, they would probably just switch out. 3. In Gen 1, the only electric-type moves Porygon could learn via TM were Thunderbolt, Thunder, and Thunder Wave, which many other Pokemon could also learn via TM, and it couldn't learn any electric moves via level up at all. 4. Porygon 2's electric type options were just as limited in its debut generation. If you didn't have Crystal, you were even more limited thanks to the fact that they removed Thunderbolt as a TM in Gen 2. It could learn Zap Cannon at level 44, but it could also learn that via TM. The only other electric type move it could learn via TM was Thunder. If you wanted Porygon 2 to learn Thunderbolt, you had to talk to the move tutor outside of Goldenrod Game Corner in Crystal and pay him 4,000 coins. Furthermore, while Porygon Z's debut generation gave him more offensive electric type options to work with, it doesn't change the fact that the entire line has more normal type moves than anything else. 5. And finally, the line being a line of pure normal virtual reality Pokemon is actually really clever. It's a nice little acknowledgement of the fact that technology evolves with the times. At the time Porygon debuted in Generation 1, some forms of technology, such as cell phones and MP3 players, were seen by some as little more than novelties and weren't taken seriously. But as the years went on, technology evolved, to the point that technology that was seen as weird wasn't the exception anymore and actually became the norm. So the Porygon line being pure normal type actually fits it really well.
Number 4. Baynet. Hey you, kid, do you know the backstory behind Baynet?
Oh, well, not really. I don't actually play Pokemon.
So Baynet is a doll that became a Pokemon over its grudge of being thrown away. At night, it seeks the child who disowned it. You know, to kill the child.
You know, Truegreen, it would help if you would actually tell your audience what you're using to back up your arguments here. Oh wait, is it because you're using its Pokedex entries? I.e. entries that have nothing in-game to back them up? Okay, I might be going off on a tangent here, but I think I need to explain just why his bringing up Pokedex entries to back up his argument here bothers me so much. The reason I get annoyed at arguments that use Pokedex entries to back them up, or I tend to get bemused at videos regarding Pokedex entries, is because there is so little to go by in the Pokemon games to make me take Pokedex entries in general seriously. Hell, I'd go so far as to say there's more in the games to support the theory that the entry should be disputed. It's never explained anywhere how exactly the Pokedex works. The Pokedex entries themselves don't even appear in the Pokedex until after the Pokemon have been obtained or caught, almost like the trainers. The child or teenage trainers are filling in those entries themselves. You'd think the Pokemon professors, the supposed experts in their fields, would have caught on to this. Oh wait, 3 already have. Why do you think Professors Rowan, Juniper, and Sycamore only care about whether or not you've seen the Pokemon in the Sinnoh, Unova, and Kalos regions for the sake of whether or not to count their respective Pokedexes as having been completed? They know the Pokedex entries don't get filled until after the Pokemon have been caught. They don't care about those entries. They just want to know that the Pokemon are there. The reason they don't care about those entries, it's probably because they have reason to believe that the kids are filling in those Pokedex entries. They unfortunately can't stop them regarding the National Pokedex, but that's because completing the National Pokedex involves some trading. When Pokedex entries are filled in upon trading, the professors have no control over that, and they want to collaborate with other professors, so in that respect, their hands are tied. That doesn't change their stances on the regional Pokedex, however, nor should it. If the trainers aren't filling in the Pokedex entries themselves, then that just raises the question of who or what is adding these entries into the Pokedex. I'm just saying, I would like to see scientist characters actually studying the Pokedex system and database itself to see how it works. That would be cool. Okay, end of tangent. Now back to Banette. Banette is said to have been a doll that was thrown away by a child. That makes no sense because it's an entire species of Pokemon that evolves from Shuppet, a species of Pokemon related to Banette. Which came first, the Shuppet or the Banette? Did the first Shuppet hatch from an egg bred from 2 Banette, or did the Shuppet evolve into the first Banette, making its Pokedex entry complete bunk? Now do you see why using Pokedex entries to back up arguments like this is such a problem?
So I defined this Pokemon as bad. Maybe I'll go as far as to call it evil.
Hey, get it because it's called the evil type in Japanese. Wait. Are you trying to say that you knew the dark type is called the evil type in Japanese this whole time? Then what was the point of your entire Mega Absol segment? You just made that entire segment make even less sense. What even the fuck?
So I believe the dark type would be appropriate. I know, 2 ghost dark types in one region would be weird, but guess what? I don't care.
So you don't care if the Hoenn region would have introduced 2 Pokemon that had no weaknesses and 3 immunities? Yeah, Sableye has crappy stats, but Banette has a pretty good attack. Its debut generation was before the physical special split, so Banette's ghost moves were exclusively physical attacks. Not only would Banette have kicked Sableye's ass, but it would have kicked so many other ghost asses as well. That doll would have been broken in more ways than one. Fuck, no wonder that kid threw it away.
Number 3. Marowak. So I really don't understand why Marowak is a ground type. It may be my problem, maybe it's obvious. I don't know. Is it because bones are buried in the ground?
Yeah,
Not
pretty much.
This one.
It's also got a bit of a dinosaur motif going on.
Those bones are on his body. Even if this ground typing was justified, then the fighting typing could also be added without any problem. There hasn't even been a ground fighting type yet. So maybe Mega Marowak can fix that.
So you're saying that Marowak should be part fighting because it uses a bone as a club? First off, Cubone also uses a bone as a club. Why not say that Cubone should be part fighting as well? Second of all, it's really hard to justify a part fighting Mega Evolution when it doesn't learn any part fighting type moves via level up, and it can only learn 5 via TM, 2 via breeding, and 2 via tutoring. Just saying.
Number 2. Golduck. In my second Pokemon Misconceptions video, I talked about how Golduck is often mistaken for a water psychic type. We all know how Golduck has psychic abilities. Gold is even the color associated with psychic type in the Pokemon games. So why in the wonderful world of Pokemon is Golduck not a psychic type? 5 years ago, I even made a psychic type evolved form of Golduck for this very reason. It's called Rebraduck, and although the artwork doesn't hold up anymore, the concept is still pretty strong. I know you're already convinced, so there's no reason to continue.
If you knew what Golduck was based on, you wouldn't say Golduck was mistyped at all. Golduck's design is based partially on the Kappa from Japanese folklore. The Kappa is a species of monster said to inhabit ponds and rivers and was believed to try and lure people into those bodies of water in order to drown them. You know what the Kappa were believed to generally not have? Psychic powers. So just because Golduck may be able to learn moves like Confusion and Zen Headbutt via level up and Calm Mind and Psychic via TM, that and the other stuff you brought up does not justify a part psychic typing.
And number 1 is... Gyarados! So Gyarados is a water flying type. Ever since I was a young boy, I've been baffled. Baffled, I say! Confused as to why Gyarados was not a water dragon type. I mean, it looks like a Chinese dragon. It's based on the Chinese myth of carps jumping up waterfalls over a dragon gate and becoming dragons, and I know I said a dragon type shouldn't be acceptable early on into the game, but wasn't the point of Gyarados to surprise kids who took the time to train and evolve a weak Magikarp?
You know what else you said?
Would just ruin the rarity of the dragon type in Generation 1.
Yeah, that argument was stupid, but it doesn't change the fact that making Gyarados part dragon would have been even worse than making Charizard part dragon, since not only does Magikarp evolve at a lower level, but you can either buy one at the Pokemon Center outside of Mount Moon, or fish for one as soon as you get the old rod from the fishing guru in Vermilion City and start fishing for them at God knows how many places. Holy shit, Magikarp is so fucking common, it's fucking ridiculous, I'm drowning in red fish!
So getting a dragon type from such a little Pokemon would be a sweet reward. I say we take the dragon typing from Altaria and give it to Gyarados.
I'm okay. First of all, you make it sound like you wanted to fit Altaria on your list but couldn't fit it in anywhere. First shoehorning in a mention of Zangoose during the Porygon segment, and now this. Have these countdown makers forgotten the concept of the honorable mention? Second of all, I would like to point out the theory of Gyarados' origin being based on a particular myth from Chinese lore. It ties into the myth of the Dragon's Gate, where the Dragon's Gate is located at the top of a waterfall, and any carp who are able to swim upstream and make the final leap over the top of the waterfall and to the Dragon's Gate are transformed into a dragon by the gods. Where Gyarados differs, however, is that it's more based on the flying sea serpent, in that it used to be a dragon, but it abused its power to the point that it destroyed entire cities. So the gods punished it by demoting it from a dragon into a flying sea serpent, hence why it's water flying instead of water dragon. There's even a funny coincidence that lines up with that, if it's true. I couldn't find anything online to corroborate what I'm about to say, unfortunately, but supposedly the developers of Game Freak originally intended Gyarados to be a water dragon type, but changed it to water flying early on when they realized how broken that type combination would be. Like I said earlier, Dragon was only weak to ice in Gen 1. Water resisted ice even back then. Water Dragon wouldn't have been weak to anything. Look at Gyarados' stat spread. This thing would have been so fucking broken in the days of Gen 1 if it was Water Dragon instead of Water Flying. Yeah, it couldn't learn any flying-type moves, which admittedly was pretty weird, and it took until Gen 4 to give it access to one via tutoring, and even then it was from Platinum on, but water flying is such a good defensive type combination overall that I really can't complain about how it went without the lack of flying stab for so long. Hell, even if I was to raise a Gyarados in a later game, I still wouldn't bother to give it Bounce, because 1, it's not that good of a flying type move in my opinion, and 2, it's still got plenty of other options to make it kick a lot of ass. Also, if you think the water flying type combination makes no sense for Gyarados in terms of design, I'd like to tell you about the Koi no Bori, or carp streamers, carp-shaped windsocks flown during Children's Day in Japan. Children's Day is a traditional calendrical event in Japan that got so big to the point that it's been declared a national holiday in that country. Yeah, the carp streamer does symbolize the Chinese legend of the carp swimming upstream to become a dragon, and the way the streamer blows in the wind is meant to make it look like a carp is swimming, but sometimes you have to look at things at face value to get the answer you need. Look, it's a carp streamer blowing in the wind. Make Gyarados a flying type. Okay. Seriously, do these people not realize just how much stuff could be explained by spending time on Bulbapedia, Cerebi, and Wikipedia?
If the dragon typing isn't an option, the dark typing is okay, I guess. You hear that, Mega Gyarados? You're okay.
Water Dark is just okay for Mega Gyarados? Mega Gyarados is in borderline already. It's not an OU in name, but it's perfectly viable for OU. Look at Mega Gyarados' stat spread. Do you really want to make that type of mon only weak to Dragon and Fairy? Even if it would only have 3 resistances, its defense is above 100, its special defense is 130, and its base HP is 95. I'm pretty sure that if Mega Gyarados was Water Dragon instead of Water Dark, then it would be in the friggin' Uber tier. It's obviously getting a lot of love if the competitive scene has anything to say about it, and casual players will still be using Gyarados no matter what its Mega Evolution's typing is.
Have you ever looked at a Pokemon and thought that its type just doesn't make sense? Well, I have, many times. And so, today's video is going to be a countdown of the top 10 Pokemon whose types appear to make no sense at first glance.
At first glance? The title of your video implies that it's about Pokemon whose types make no sense at all. If a Pokemon's type makes no sense until you think about it and realize how it works later on, then it doesn't make no sense anymore, does it?
In my opinion, of course.
Nothing wrong with it being your opinion, but if the reasoning and arguments used to back up said opinion are questionable, I will call them out. And given how what you said the video is about comes into conflict with the video's title, we're already off to a bad start.
Number 10 we have Yanmega. In general, I like Yanmega, but not as much as Yanma. It's on this list not because I feel that its current typing doesn't make sense as such.
Yet another statement of yours that comes into conflict with the title of your video. If you're not saying that Yanmega's typing makes no sense, then it shouldn't be on this list.
But it might suit another type a little bit more. In Yanmega's case, this typing would be Bug Dragon. The fact that Yanma and Yanmega are based on dragonflies is enough for this to work. Yanma suits bug flying much more than it would suit Bug Dragon, so I only feel this way about Yanmega. Yanmega's current typing still makes sense, which is why it's at the bottom of this list, but I still believe that the potential for a Bug Dragon type was very much a missed opportunity here.
First off, dragonflies are not dragons. Even with that in mind, Yanmega isn't really based on modern dragonflies. You want to see mons that are based on modern dragonflies and their relatives of antlions, look at Vibrava and Flygon. Now, I imagine many of the people watching have seen my commentary on Truegreen 7's list of top 10 mistyped Pokemon, and I talked about Vibrava and Flygon's design in that. If you haven't seen that commentary, the link is in the description below. Now back to Yanmega. Yanmega, both in concept and in name, is based on the Meganeura insects. Meganeura is a genus of extinct insects that were around during the time of the Carboniferous geologic period, which started around 359 million years ago and ended around 299 million years ago. Yes, the Meganeura insects are related to our modern-day dragonflies, but they are not the same thing. Yanmega's bug flying type makes perfect sense if you look into where the idea for Yanmega came from, and it even explains how Yanma evolves into Yanmega. Yanma can only evolve into Yanmega after Yanma learns Ancient Power. Given how Yanma is based on a genus of insects that went extinct close to 299 million years ago, all of a sudden Yanma learning Ancient Power in the first place makes a lot more sense. You see how it all works out in the end?
At number 9 we have Helioptile and Heliolisk. We all know that these two are part electric type, but what could the other type be? I thought that the typing of these two was completely obvious, but I was wrong. I first came across Helioptile in Route 9, a route that you would typically expect to be inhabited by ground types. In fact, the other two Pokemon that can be encountered in this route, Hippopotas and Sandile, are ground types. Helioptile's Pokedex entry in X also states that it makes its home in deserts. Sounds like a ground type, right? No! Electric normal. Just doesn't make sense to me.
You know what other Pokemon make their homes in deserts? The Cacnea line, the Darumaka line, Maractus, and Sigilyph. You know what all these Pokemon have in common? None of them are ground or rock type.
Normal types are generally based off mammals and birds too, and these two are clearly reptiles. They just don't show many characteristics typical to that of normal type Pokemon in my opinion.
The Jigglypuff line, the Lickitung line, Ditto, the Porygon line, Dunsparce, Castform, Kecleon, Regigigas. None of them appear mammal-like, and all are part or pure normal type. In fact, Kecleon is also based on a reptile, yet not counting its color changeability, it's pure normal type by default. So why are you complaining about the Helioptile line being based on reptiles and being part normal type? Also, I find it interesting how you complained about their normal typing, yet didn't address the other half of their type combination. If you look at normal type befitting what appears to be a run-of-the-mill desert reptile alongside electric befitting their sun theme as present in their names, Helioptile evolving into Heliolisk after being exposed to a sunstone, solar power being the hidden ability of both Mons, and how what brings it all together is that the desert gets a lot of sun, and solar energy being one source of electricity thanks to photovoltaic energy cells, their electric normal typing works just fine for them.
Number 8. Flabebe, Floette, and Florges. Okay, look at these three fairies. Flabebe and Floette are holding flowers, and Florges has partially become a flower. We've had Pokemon based on flowers before. They all tend to be of a grass type, so it would make sense for the Flabebe line to be grass fairy, right? Nope! Pure fairy type.
Okay, I know I said the link for my commentary on Truegreen 7 is in the description, but I gotta play a clip from it since I discussed the Flabebe line's typing in that. Because if you looked at the possible origins of the pure fairy Flabebe line as a whole, you would know that the possible theories involve Anthea and Chloris, two deities from Greek mythology. Anthea is one of the Graces and the goddess of flowers and flowery wreaths. Chloris was a nymph. She was a minor nature goddess associated with spring, flowers, and new growth. Florges in particular seems to be based on the Anthocyte, nymphs who had hair that resembled flowers. Despite the line being associated with flowers and having flowery appendages, it's not like they themselves are flowers and bound to the plant life they look after. In fact, despite the line not benefiting from grass stab, they may benefit more from not being part grass type. Because they're pure fairy, they are only weak to poison and steel. If they were dual type grass fairy, they would also be weak to flying, fire, and ice, lose their bug resistance, and they would take ×4 damage from poison attacks. Yeah, the grass type would give them resistances to ground, water, grass, and electric, but I don't think the trade-off would be worth it.
Some of you may argue that Flabebe is merely holding a flower, so this shouldn't affect its typing. However, the Pokedex entry from Pokemon X states that the flower is likely part of its body. This is likely the case for Floette too, and the flower has clearly become a part of Florges' body. But somehow, these are pure fairy types.
So basically, her argument boiled down to how the flowers are part of their bodies. Even if you don't want to acknowledge the possible origins I cited, the flowers they have as a part of their body show that their design acknowledges a rather interesting phenomenon in nature. Mimicry. There are species of real-life animals that imitate their surroundings or other animals as a method of hiding from prey or to get closer to prey. Chameleons, viceroy butterflies, and wasp beetles are different species that illustrate different types of mimicry, for example. Different Pokemon give different nods to mimicry. Geodude looks like a rock and is rock ground type. Kecleon has the color change ability. The Froakie line has the Protean hidden ability to allow it to change its type to match the type of the move it's currently attacking with, and most famously, Sudowoodo, despite being a rock type, has the appearance of a tree, presumably to divert attention away from its key weakness to water type attacks. Even Sudowoodo's pre-evolution of Bonsly keeps up that trend by taking on the appearance of a potted plant. Given how the Flabebe line is found exclusively in gardens and among flowers, it makes sense that they would attempt to mimic the flowers with which they make their homes in order to keep away predators. Not only does this explain the flowers being part of their bodies, but it also explains the lack of a part grass type. The flowers are just fleshy appendages meant to help them mimic flowers and act as camouflage. So with that in mind, even if it can be debated that Grass Fairy would have worked better if only for the sake of all those grass moves in their move pools, the Flabebe line being pure fairy does make sense both mechanically and in flavor. Though unfortunately they're weak to poison type attacks no matter what. The Flabebe on Kalos Route 4 are okay. The ones on Route 7, however, had to worry about all the Krogunk and Roselia. But hey, that's predator-prey relationships and competition for ya. Look at that! The Pokemon games are actually teaching us more about nature!
Number 7 is Inkay. Inkay is easily one of my favorite New Kalos Pokemon. At first glance, I thought that it was a water type. I mean, it's based on a squid, so it's easy to see why I thought that. Inkay is actually a Psychic Dark type. Its Psychic tag is understandable, considering the hypnotic lights on its body, but outside of its move pool, it's hard to see why it's a Dark type. On the other hand, Malamar, Inkay's evolution, seems to represent both of these types very well within its design, but I still can't get past the fact that Inkay looks like it would suit a water typing so well.
First off, Malamar still looks like a squid. It just happens to be an upside down squid. Hence why you have to hold the 3DS upside down for Inkay to evolve once it reaches level 30. Second, you must not be familiar with Call of Cthulhu or H.P. Lovecraft stories. If you know about Cthulhu, you wouldn't be complaining about the Inkay line Psychic Dark typing at all. For those who might not know, Cthulhu is one of the Great Old Ones, a group of cosmic horror entities in H.P. Lovecraft stories. It's also the namesake of the Call of Cthulhu tabletop role-playing game based on said stories. In those stories, Cthulhu and the other Great Old Ones are said to make anyone who so much as looks at them completely insane due to the Great Old One's very existence being completely outside humanity's realm of comprehension. It might just be a theory since there's no direct evidence for this, but given Cthulhu's appearance, particularly its facial tentacles, it's safe to say that the Inkay line is partially based on Cthulhu, and their designs may be based on Cthulhu if Cthulhu is more squid-like. If you imagine the Inkay line as being partially based on the cosmic horrors that drive people insane, the Psychic Dark typing is a lot more apt for this pair of squids.
Game theory time!
Number 6 is Jinx. Jinx has always been one of the more confusing Pokemon to begin with, but its ice typing is just not obvious at all. You'd only be able to guess her type if you stuck her against a snowy background. Now, I might be completely off the mark here, but I heard somewhere that the ice type was actually implemented into the Generation 1 games very late into their development. I don't remember the source that I heard that from.
Gotta love how you reference a source you don't remember enough to properly cite.
There are no pure ice types in this game, as the type was simply stuck onto other Pokemon, including Jinx. It makes sense too, seeing as none of the ice tech designs of Generation 1 exactly scream ice.
Never mind the seal line being based on various species of seals found in the polar regions. Cloyster, however, I couldn't find any evidence about any of the species in the genus it's based on, Spondylus, being found in the polar regions. But because there's so little to read about online about the Spondylus genus as a whole, I can't say you're right or wrong. And Lapras? We'll be getting back to that later.
For this reason, it's possible that Jinx was never even intended to be an ice type when it was first designed, but it was only added later. Why? Personally, I think that this may have been done to make Jinx stand out a little bit more from the other humanoid psychic types in Generation 1, but that's just my opinion.
Okay, there are several factors behind the origin of Jinx, and every one of them gives a proper explanation for it being part ice. First, its original black coloring was meant to signify frostbite. Even it being recolored to purple in the Gen 2 games works precisely because that coloring is still a nice parallel to frostbite. Another theory is that the original black coloring was based on the legends of Nordic princesses' skin becoming black from being out in the cold for too long. Again, frostbite. Furthermore, continuing the possible Nordic inspiration, it could be based on cartoonish depictions of the operatic Fat Lady, known for portraying Valkyries in various operas. Valkyries come from Norse mythology. Another possibility, and the one I buy into the most, is that Jinx is based on the Yama-Uba, a monster from Japanese mythology that was depicted as wearing a red kimono, having light hair, dark skin, and large lips, and it also has control over ice and snow. It would also serve to explain its part psychic typing if you look at telekinesis, and that applying to Jinx to explain its control over ice. Another interesting fact about the Yama-Uba is that it was also known as the Yamanba. Yamanba is also a slang term for the extreme end of Japanese Ganguro fashion, which may yet be another explanation for Jinx having dark skin and light hair. All of this information I got from Bulbapedia, which just says to me that you didn't do any research for this. You supposedly found the source that stated that Jinx getting its part ice typing came late in the original game's development, a source you didn't cite because you couldn't even remember what that source was, yet you couldn't go to Bulbapedia to look up possible origins for Jinx's typing? Are you fucking kidding me?
My choice for number 5 is Palkia. Palkia is one of my favorite Pokemon, but I have to admit that its typing doesn't really make a lot of sense. Palkia's counterpart Dialga, a Dragon Steel Pokemon, really does look its type. Unfortunately, I just can't say the same for Palkia.
First off, Palkia is colored like a pearl and appears to have pearls on its body, which is fitting for the version mascot of the Pearl version of the game. Pearls come from mollusks, which are found in various bodies of water. Second, a theory is that its design, particularly its head crest, is partially inspired by the goblin shark, which is a fish. Third, and this is the most important part, there's its role in the Pokemon universe to take into account. Its typing makes more sense when you look at Dialga and why Dialga is part steel. Time tends to be regarded as fixed to a certain extent. Yeah, there are time travel stories in science fiction that revolve around going back in time to change certain events or prevent certain events from being changed, but different time travel stories go so far as to say one can only do so much before the timeline gets completely messed up. Steel, while it can be bent and messed with, can only be messed with so much before it completely breaks. Space, however, is regarded as highly fluid and malleable in astrophysics. This clip summarizes quite nicely Einstein's theory of what gravity is and how planets, planetoids, and large stars displace space.
It wasn't until Einstein came along and told us that gravity is when large masses sitting in space displace space the same way a boat displaces water in a bathtub. Normally, space has no properties, no gravity, no direction, no up or down, but when you add a planet or a planetoid or a sun into space, you basically bend space. You push space out away from that object, and space tries its best to force its way back to where it used to be, but it can't because there's an object in the way, and instead ends up pushing other planets and ourselves down towards that surface.
What's that? A clip from an Armored Skeptic video and a commentary on a PokeTubers video? The internet can come up with the weirdest juxtapositions sometimes. In all seriousness, Palkia's part water typing and how it ties into the theory of the fluidity of space shows that the designers on Game Freak's development team are really good at doing their research. Now, if only some fans could bother trying to follow in their footsteps.
Number 4 is Mega Gyarados. When I first saw Mega Gyarados, I thought that for sure its typing would be Water Dragon, but I was wrong. Mega Gyarados' typing is actually Water Dark. The Dark type seems to completely come out of nowhere.
Except that if you look at Gyarados' moveset, there are more dark moves in its move pool than there are dragon moves, so Mega Gyarados being part dark works in game mechanics and in design. Just look at it!
Gyarados, along with Charizard, has always come under scrutiny for being part flying type instead of part dragon type. Mega Charizard X fixed the problem for Charizard, but Mega Gyarados didn't follow suit. So, I guess we have to accept that this guy will never be a real dragon after all.
I like how there's a good argument in favor of the idea that Mega Gyarados should be Water Dragon instead of Water Dark, and she didn't even bring it up. The Magikarp line's A groups are Water 2, which has mostly fish with a few mons based on cephalopods, and Dragon, which contains many draconic-looking Pokemon. Even so, that can be countered with the fact that the Ekans line, the Trico line, Seviper, the Feebas line, the Scraggy line, and the Helioptile line are in that A group as well. Basically, if it's reptilian, chances are it's in the Dragon A group even if those mons aren't Dragon type. Furthermore, Water Dark actually works pretty well, especially if you know what the Dark type is called in Japanese. In the Japanese versions of the game, the Dark type is called the Evil type. I'd say Mega Gyarados looks pretty evil. Not to mention that Mega Gyarados is the strongest mon in the main villain's team in X and Y, so there you go.
The spot for number 3 goes to Goomy and Sliggoo. The infamous dragon types of Kalos. They just don't look like dragon types at all.
Compared to what? Mega Ampharos? Altaria? Vibrava? The Tyrant line? The Noibat line? Zygarde? Explain your comparisons!
I know I'm not alone on this. I understand that these two have Goodra as their final evolution, which is quite clearly a dragon.
Again, compared to what? If you're comparing it to the other pseudo-legendary dragons, it's the least draconic looking out of all of them. You can still tell it's a dragon, yes, but it really hurts your argument that you're not explaining which dragons you're comparing Goodra to.
But these two are worlds away from looking like dragons.
I probably should have brought this part up earlier, but I should say that putting only part of an evolutionary line for an entry really annoys me. Either put an entire evolutionary line in for an entry, or just one mon. Otherwise it just looks like a friggin' cop-out putting a tie-in since you can't choose one over the other. Especially with Goomy, since you can easily make the case that it's just a baby slug-like dragon of some sort. Alright, just because Goomy and Sliggoo may not look like dragons per se, doesn't mean there's nothing else in the origin of their design concepts that give them a reason for their typing. In Goomy's case, Goomy appears to be based on the Glaucus atlanticus, a sea slug whose common names include the blue dragon. In Sliggoo's case, it appears to be based on the loup caracole, a mythical beast from French folklore that's described as having characteristics of both serpents and mollusks, and had a shell on its back much like a snail shell. Another theory that works in support of both, especially Sliggoo, is that a possible factor in their design is that in the Kazakh version of the 12-year animal cycle like that used in the Chinese zodiac, the dragon is replaced with the snail.
They're based on slugs and snails, so a bug or
slugs and snails are not bugs. And we'll get back to the poison thing.
Bug dragon would have made a lot more sense. Gurdurr doesn't have as much as a bug-type feel as its earlier stages, but I think that having a 3-stage bug-dragon-type evolution line would have really made things more interesting.
I hate to break it to you, but dual-typing the line bug-dragon would make even less sense. None of the possible origins I cited have anything about bugs or other insects in them, and the only bug-type move the Goomy line can learn is infestation via TM. And the poison-type thing that you brought up is better design-wise, since there are venomous species of snails, such as different species of cone snail, but even so, the slugs that inspired the line's designs are not venomous, so giving the line the poison typing does not make sense. Also, the typing wouldn't hold up mechanically, as the line can only learn 3 poison-type moves via TM and 2 via breeding. Sorry.
Number 2 is Lucario. I, like many people, am a pretty big fan of Lucario's design. However, it does have one big flaw, being that it does not look like its type. At all.
Execute doesn't look like it should be part grass due to its name and design being partially based on a food in the meat egg group, yet I don't see you complaining about that. Just saying, your complaint seems rather vague and arbitrary right now, but go on.
I would genuinely be unable to guess Lucario's secondary type if I didn't already know what it was. I understand that it was a good idea to give this Pokemon a unique type combination of Fighting Steel, especially given the abundance of pure fighting types. It makes Lucario shine in a way that others don't, but at the very least, it could have been incorporated into its design much better. The only hint towards its steel typing is its metallic spikes on its paws. 2 little spikes.
First of all, you missed a spot. Second of all, you said there wasn't anything to hint at its secondary type at all. Yet here you are, admitting that there's something in its design to indicate its secondary type, thus contradicting what you just said a little bit ago. A small hint is not the same as no hint at all.
This could be a reference to the phrase Iron Fist, but I don't think that it justifies the steel type.
How about Lucario's name then? One theory is that Lucario's name is based on Orichalcum, which itself comes from Orichalcos. Ore meaning mountain, Chalcos meaning copper or bronze. Orichalcum is a mythical metal mentioned in several ancient writings, including works by Hesiod, Plato, and Josephus. In Plato's writings in particular, it was mentioned to be second in value only to gold, and rumored to have been mined in Atlantis, but by the time of figures such as Plato and Critias, Orichalcum was known only in name. Bulbapedia and Wikipedia. They're there for a reason, and looking this stuff up on those sites does not take up that much time.
There are other Pokemon that have metallic spikes on their bodies, but aren't of a steel type.
Rampardos isn't the best example. I'm pretty sure those alleged metallic spikes are just a different form of rock. Rampardos is a fossil Pokemon after all.
None of its Pokedex entries hint towards why it's a steel type either.
Maybe because those Pokedex entries aren't meant to be taken seriously or are meant to be disputed in universe. I went to a 2-minute tangent in my Truegreen commentary about the theory of the possibility of Pokedex entries being written by the trainers capturing the Mons, and I really don't want to play the clip or get into it again.
Lucario is an awesome Pokemon, but its type just doesn't make sense.
All the more reason to believe that you did very little, if any, research for this video.
And so, in my opinion, the Pokemon whose type makes the least sense is Lugia. Lugia is possibly one of the most confusing Pokemon in regard to typing of them all. Let's look at this. Lugia is referred to as the Guardian of the Sea in both the games and the anime.
Just because you have control over or watch over something doesn't make you that thing. Refer back to what I said about the Flabébé line.
Ho-Oh, the version mascot of Gold and Heart Gold, is a fire flying type. Lugia, as its counterpart, is the version mascot of Silver and Soul Silver and is... psychic flying? This doesn't make sense. There have been so many hints toward Lugia being part water type, and barely any hints that point toward it being part psychic type. I went digging for clues, and the fact that Lugia is able to use telepathy in the anime may hint toward a psychic typing, right? Wrong!
It seems to me that you're missing a fairly big detail in regards to both Ho-Oh and Lugia and what they symbolize. You see it as fire and water, while I see it more as sun and moon. Think about it. Ho-Oh is based on several types of birds, including the Fan-Wan, the phoenix, and the three-legged crow. The Fan-Wan is a bird from Chinese mythology that has similarities with the phoenix. The Fan-Wan is also known as the August rooster. August is a summer month, meaning the days are longer and the nights are shorter. The phoenix, a bird of fire known for resurrecting from its own ashes after it dies, is also associated with the sun. The three-legged crow is a bird present in several East Asian mythologies that is believed to inhabit or otherwise symbolize the sun. To parallel Ho-Oh's association with the sun, Lugia is associated with the moon. The moon controls the tides, which would serve to explain Lugia's status as guardian of the seas. There's also the fact that one possible origin of the name Lugia is Luna, the Latin term for the moon. You know what two English words had their origins from Luna? Lunacy and lunatic. Two words that have been used in history to refer to people with various types of mental illnesses. The terms came from the old belief that said mental illnesses had a connection to the moon. The psychic type is all about the mind, so when you think about how the moon was believed to have made people crazy, and is scientifically proven to have an effect on the ocean's tides, all of a sudden Lugia's part psychic typing, despite it being the guardian of the seas, makes a lot more sense.
Other legendary Pokemon, such as Entei and Shaman, have both been shown to have this ability too, despite not being of a psychic type.
Shaman is the supposed embodiment of human gratitude and empathy. With this alleged tie to human thoughts and emotions, its telepathic ability makes sense. Also, the Entei shown to have telepathic abilities was in the third movie and was a psychic manifestation created by the unknown based on Molly's memories of her father and what she read about his research. The reason it was telepathic was because the unknown in the movie were powerful enough to have read Molly's thoughts and project those thoughts into reality. Two different fruits.
Let's look at why else Lugia should be a water type. In the openings for both Silver and Soul Silver, Lugia is seen at the bottom of the ocean. Lugia has also been classed as a water type many times in the Pokemon TCG, despite not being a water type.
You know, the card game that made poison type Pokemon either grass type or psychic type because the poison type doesn't exist in the card game? Oh, but since you mentioned Lugia's typing in the card game specifically, let's see what other Lugia cards types are in the other expansions of the card game. Oh look! Other Lugia cards are psychic type after all! Way to cherry pick, Eevee! And what's this? Some of the Lugia cards are normal type? That's bizarre! Seriously though, it's the friggin' card game! Using examples from the card game to back up a point for an argument related to the video games is even worse than using something from the anime to back up an argument about the video games. I'd say you're comparing apples to oranges, but at this point it's more like you're comparing apples to squash.
Lugia is easily the most infuriating Pokemon to me in regard to type confusion, and thoroughly deserves its place at the top of this list.
Another detail you seem to have missed regarding Lugia. I'll warn everyone in advance that this isn't from the core series of games, but I ask you all to bear with me. Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness, the sequel to Pokemon Colosseum. Gale of Darkness has more shadow Pokemon. Pokemon that have had the doors to their hearts artificially closed by the villainous organization in those games to turn them into fighting machines. In other words, those Pokemon were driven insane. In Gale of Darkness, the biggest threat among the shadow Pokemon is Shadow Lugia. Given the codename XD001 for its status of being the first Shadow Pokemon that cannot be purified by any means. The stronger Shadow status is signified by its color scheme, which is almost an inversion of Lugia's normal color scheme. Dare I say it's like the dark side of the moon? And there's just our outro left, so I'm ending this video here. Oh, but there's more. We got the second list to cover, everyone, so keep your seatbelts buckled.
Hey there everyone, it's Candy Eevee here and I'm back with a top 10 video. Well, sorta. You may recognize the title of this video, and that would be because this is essentially a part 2 to one of my very first top 10 videos. The video, Top 10 Pokemon Whose Types Make No Sense, is somehow my most viewed video at over 600,000 views. Which is just crazy, especially seeing as this was one of my very first trivia style videos, and it certainly is not my best. But while I can't redo that video, I've been wanting to make a follow-up video for quite some time.
The fact that she says it's not her best and calls this a follow-up yet doesn't seem to address any real flaws with that top 10 video says to me that she stands by what she said in that top 10 video. Now you know why I started with commentating on that video despite that video being over a year old.
So, in today's video, we are going to be looking at 10 more Pokemon whose types appear to make no sense at first glance.
If they appear to make no sense at first glance yet do make sense later, then they cease to make no sense and thus shouldn't be on the list.
Seeing as I have already made a top 10 video on this topic, the Pokemon featured here are in no particular order at all. The Pokemon featured on this list are here because their official types don't seem to suit them very well, or there are other types that I think would suit them more. With that out of the way, let's get started.
So basically this list has no sense of progression whatsoever. Neither did the last one despite that being a top 10 list. At least you're being upfront about the lack of progression in this list, so points for honesty this time around.
Number 1. Psyduck and Golduck. Do I even need to explain this one?
Yeah. When you're presenting an argument, even one as simple as this, you need to back it up with evidence. That's kinda how arguments are supposed to work. We learned this shit in high school.
Heck, Psyduck even has a little hint toward its powers in its name. Psyduck, as in Psychic Dog. I just don't understand why these two are pure water types. Their Pokedex entries go on and on about their mysterious powers.
Mysterious or odd powers, yet they have access to so few Psychic type moves. Points to these entries, at least they have some form of in-game evidence to back them up, unlike so many other Dex entries in-game.
They have a ton of Psychic type moves in their move pools.
A ton of Psychic type moves in their move pools, huh? Let's stop and count, shall we? Only 4 via level up, 5 via TM, 4 via breeding, and 3 via tutoring, 2 of which it can already learn via level up. This sounds like a lot, right? Well, here's the problem. It learns more normal type moves via all of these categories except for tutoring. 6 via level up, 18 via TM or HM, and 7 via breeding, while it can only learn 1 via tutoring. So using your logic, you might as well say it should be part normal type.
But that's still pure water type. Why? These two are some of the few Pokemon that I am genuinely unable to justify their type.
If you knew what Golduck was based on, you wouldn't say Golduck was mistyped at all. Golduck's design is based partially on the Kappa from Japanese folklore. The Kappa is a species of monster said to inhabit ponds and rivers and was believed to try and lure people into those bodies of water in order to drown them. You know what the Kappa were believed to generally not have? Psychic powers. So just because Golduck may be able to learn moves like Confusion and Zen Headbutt via level up and Calm Mind and Psychic via TM, that and the other stuff you brought up does not justify a part Psychic typing.
Why would you leave so many hints toward a Psychic typing and then just leave them as pure water types? It doesn't make sense.
Pure water still works for it. As the saying goes, if it looks like a duck, if it quacks like a duck, if it walks like a duck, and if it swims like a duck, then it's safe to say that it's a fucking duck.
Number 2. Uxie, Azelf, and Mesprit. The late Guardians of Sinnoh were heavily inspired by pixies. Of course, they made their debut in Diamond and Pearl 2 generations before the fairy type was introduced. However, a lot of Pokemon were retyped in Generation 6. Of all the Pokemon to be retyped, you'd think that these 3 would be strong candidates. Perhaps the fact that they're legendary Pokemon might have made the change a little more controversial, but personally I would have loved to see how these 3 would do as Psychic fairy types.
Going by that logic, why not argue that they should have made the Lake Guardians Psychic Water instead? Hey, they're Lake Guardians, right? You're the one who spent so much time complaining that Lugia should have been water flying instead of psychic flying in your original Pokemon whose types make no sense video, and now you're okay with legendaries watching over water not being part water type? Instead, you're saying that the Lake Guardians should be part fairy because they're based on pixies? Just because they look like a thing doesn't mean they are that thing. Also, the fact that their designs and names are partially derived from some types of fake creatures doesn't mean all that much when you look at the fact that beings like goblins and hags are considered fake creatures in some countries' folklore.
Azelf in particular would be interesting, seeing as it has the most potential of the 3 as a physical attacker. But hey, we already have Gardevoir as a Psychic Fairy type already, so we're not completely let down.
You say you would have liked to see Azelf change to part fairy most of all due to it being a physical attacker. First of all, Azelf is technically a mixed attacker since both of its attacking stats are of equal value. Second of all, even if its attack stat was higher than its special attack stat, it being part fairy wouldn't help it much since the only physical move fairy has in its arsenal is Play Rough. Hell, Psychic as a type isn't much better off since it only has 3 physical moves, only one of which Azelf can learn. And in every generation Azelf's been available, regardless of whether or not you count duplicate moves, it has more special moves available to it than it does physical moves. The gap may not seem all that big, but currently if you don't count duplicates, it has a total of 20 physical moves available to it across Level Up, TMs, and Tutoring, versus 25 special moves, meaning it has 25% more special moves available to it than physical moves in the Gen 6 games. Pretty significant leaning towards special moves. Even if it is a mixed attacker, you might be better off making Azelf a special attacker looking at the moves available to it. But don't take my word for it, look at Smoggin. The only effective strategies it lists that allow Azelf to capitalize on its attack stat are as a suicide lead using Explosion, while as a special sweeper, you can set up with Nasty Plot and use Psyshock and Fire Blast to sweep. But let's put competitive stuff aside. Let's assume you just want to use it in-game. Its most powerful physical moves besides Explosion are Giga Impact, which is the physical equivalent of Hyper Beam, Last Resort, which you can't even use unless all your other moves are completely out of PP, Iron Tail, which only has 75% accuracy, and Natural Gift, a move which not only requires holding a berry to work, but getting its most powerful base power requires one of the most rare berries in the games, and the berry held also affects the move's type. Physical attacker my ass!
Number 3. Azurill. The lowest stage of the Azumarill line, Azurill was introduced as a baby Pokemon a generation after its evolutions. Marill and Azumarill at the time were pure water types, later being changed to Water Fairy in Generation 6. Azurill looks pretty similar to its evolutions, right? So it would be safe to assume that it would share their typing. Upon its debut, Azurill was a pure normal type. What? It looks so similar to its evolutions. What's so different about it that it requires a different typing?
It's a baby. It needs time to age before it can really fit into its surroundings. How is that so hard to understand?
Azurill learns a bunch of water-type moves naturally through TM and Egg moves. How does this make sense for something that isn't even a water type? Its Pokedex entries even go on about how it lives near water too. It has all the signs pointing toward a water typing, so why is it a normal type? It doesn't make sense!
Azurill is normal fairy and used to be pure normal pre-Gen 6. It changes type when it evolves. You know what else it can change when it evolves? Gender. Azurill and Marill are a reference to the fact that some species of animals change their biology as they age to a different phase of their lives. It's not just sex. Some animals go from living only on land to living in water and on land. So Game Freak decided to design a line based on that. You see how it all comes together?
Number 4. The entire Dynamo line. This line, of course, heavily draws inspiration from electric eels. Electros's Pokedex entry states that it climbs out of the ocean, suggesting that it makes its habitat there. As well as Chargestone Cave, Dynamo and Electric can also be found in Seaside Cave, which would suggest an aquatic habitat. I'm pretty much indifferent to the types of these Pokemon though. Even if a partial water typing would make more sense seeing as they're based on eels, I can still understand why they are pure electric type.
You can understand why they're pure electric? Then why did you put them on your list?
Number 5. Shelmet. Shelmet and Karrablast both have pretty strange ways of evolving. They only evolve when traded with each other. During this process, Karrablast supposedly steals Shelmet's armor and then evolves into a Scavalier. And Shelmet, left without its armor, evolves into a Selgor. As a result of having stolen Shelmet's armor, Karrablast also gains a Steel type upon evolution. It makes sense, right? Well, not until you see that Shelmet was never even part Steel type in the first place. Why? If Karrablast gains a secondary Steel type upon evolution as a result of stealing the same armor that Shelmet wore all along, then wouldn't it make sense for Shelmet to have been Bug Steel to begin with? I just can't seem to make sense of it.
The problem is that you're oversimplifying it. The fact that they evolve while trading with each other is a big factor. If it was as simple as Karrablast steals Shelmet's armor and both evolve as a result of that, then why would trading need to be a factor at all? Not much is explained about the trading process itself, but given how various in-game mechanics are involved, such as needing to be in a Pokemon Center, the Pokemon's friendships being reset to their base friendships after the trade is completed, the Pokemon evolving after the trade is completed if they do indeed evolve as a result of trading, etc., shows that some sort of electrical stimulation occurs as part of the trading process. Maybe that electrical stimulation affects the armor in some way and gives the Karrablast more armor and makes it part Steel type when the Karrablast evolves into a Scavalier. And that's also why Shelmet was never part Steel type to begin with. There wasn't much armor for it. Really, it's just a little helmet when the Shelmet has it, but it's enough to slow it down. When it evolves into Excelgor, however, holy shit, it's fucking lightning fast, but at the cost of low defenses. Its offensive stats are quite good, its special attack in particular, because look at it, it's a fucking ninja now! You know, if you actually stop to put the pieces together, you'd see that it's actually a rather interesting puzzle here.
Number 6. Gramble. Snubbull I am willing to let go. It at least looks like it suits a fairy type a little bit. But Gramble? Just look at it! How does this thing even remotely resemble a fairy?
Because as everyone knows, all fairies had to be pink and girly. I think Tamashii Hiroka would like to have a word with you.
It turns out that Snubbull and Gramble are based on the Kusith, which are creatures from Celtic mythology, which literally translates to dog fairy.
Kusith, huh? Let's get some pictures of that. Huh, what do you know? What do all of these pictures have in common? None of them are pink or girly in any way, shape, or form. Way to invalidate whatever argument you had. You want to know how else you invalidated your shallow argument there? You acknowledged why Gramble's typing makes sense. It's literally a dog fairy. A dog fairy the size of a bull. Hence why it looks like a bulldog. Game Freak knows their shit. So would you if you bothered to look up Kusith on Google Images and Wikipedia. Not that fucking hard nor time consuming.
Number 7. Persian. While Persian's current type does sort of make sense, I can definitely see a typing of normal dog, or even just a pure dog type working for it. Doesn't it look really menacing? It looks like it would fit in really well as a dog type. Plus, it would be interesting to see how it would work competitively too. Persian learns loads of dog type moves upon level up, so it would give it a ton more coverage.
First of all, refer back to what I said about the Flabébé line's grass moves. Second of all, refer back to what I said about the dark type being called the evil type in Japanese. Yeah, cats tend to be stereotyped as being mean, but mean does not equate to evil.
Plus, normal dog is a unique type combination, so it would make Persian that bit more unique. Yeah, being quad weak to fighting would suck, but oh well. While its current typing does make sense,
then why is it on the list?
A partial dog typing would really suit it. Number 8. Weezing, Muk, and Garbodor.
Three-way tie from 3 different evolutionary lines. Way to give off an even bigger cop-out entry than Goomy and Sliggoo being in the same entry in the last video.
Okay, so I've grouped these 3 together because I would retype all of them for very similar reasons. It's not that the current typing of these 3 don't make sense as such.
God fucking damn it. If you say they don't make no sense, then don't put them on your list. The title of your video is 10 more Pokemon whose types make no sense. The fact that you're saying their types make sense invalidates the title of your fucking video. This is the 3rd entry that's done this, making this list even worse than your original list just on counts of contradiction of your video's title alone. Thus how many times you end up misleading your audience.
But considering what they're based on, I can think of additional typings that would suit them really well. For Weezing it would be Poison Flying, Muk Poison Water, and Garbodor Poison Ground.
Except the whole point of them being based on different types of pollution is that they're invading the environment, not that they've been part of the environment from the start, so them being pure poison makes perfect sense.
Number 9. Trapinch Vibrava.
Oh god, not again!
Number 10. Lapras.
Oh look,
Lapras is
it's
genuinely
later.
one of my favorite Pokemon of Generation 1, but I just don't get its type. Lapras is a typing of Water Ice. The water part of its typing doesn't even need to be questioned, but I just don't understand why it's an Ice type. It doesn't really look like an Ice type. It's not found in any cold areas with the exception of Icefall Cave, which was 2 generations after its initial debut, and its origin doesn't even back this up either.
This tells me that you didn't even bother looking at the origin section of its Bulbapedia page. If you did, you would know that 2 possible factors in its design are blue whales and humpback whales, both of which can be found in Arctic and Antarctic waters, which are really fucking cold.
Lapras is based on the Loch Ness Monster, which just makes a pure water typing make even more sense.
Oh really? Do you know how cold Loch Ness is? Its waters are only 42 degrees on average throughout the year, and that's at the surface. Loch Ness is about 752 feet deep. Even though the temperature of the water never drops below 44 degrees after a certain depth, it doesn't change the fact that when Loch Ness's water is cold enough for people to risk getting hypothermia for a good portion of the year, it would make sense for a Pokemon based on the Loch Ness monster to be part ice type, even if Loch Ness's water doesn't spend much of its time below the freezing point.
Even if I don't think that it makes a lot of sense, the ice type does benefit Lapras a lot competitively, so I'm not exactly complaining.
Yet you still felt you had enough to work with to put it on your list.
This just backs up the idea that the ice type was added later on in Generation 1's development, so it was kinda just pasted onto a bunch of Pokemon, including Lapras.
So many months after the first list, yet you still couldn't find that source to back up your claim.
At least with something like Dugong, I can sorta see why it would be an ice type, but in Lapras' case, it just really is not that obvious. I'm hoping that if we ever do see Lapras get a Mega Evolution, then that would be a great opportunity to really incorporate its ice typing into its design.
If you bothered actually doing your goddamn research, you would find that some of this stuff actually does make sense, and Lapras being part ice already works.